Game over, man. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
So serious.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 537 for June 4th, 2023. And I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
And I'm Dr. Otto Octavius himself, Ryan McQuaid.
Thanks for joining us this week, everybody. Thanks for being here, Dr. Octavius. It's always great to have you here.
Oh, man, we're caught in a web here.
We are caught in a web here.
Always clawing around here on the InSession Film Podcast.
Yeah.
You know?
Who's ready to talk about responsibility and the
What's
power that comes with
What's
it?
that?
Thanks a lot, Dad.
That's uncle to you.
Responsibility. Yeah.
That's uncle.
That's true. You know, in this universe, I guess. You know,
Yeah, in this
That's
universe.
true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, if we were to sling our way through the multiverse, it could be Dad in other
mean, it could
places
be.
of the multiverse. Yeah.
Could be
Maybe.
Aunt, you know, your aunt dies and your uncle lives. You never know.
Yeah.
You know what's really funny is they've never tapped into that in the Spider-Man ethos of like, what if Aunt May died instead? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they sort of got into it a little bit with the Amazing Spider-Man 2 with not just Uncle Ben, but his parents and what happened there. You know, it didn't work out necessarily, but they tried.
Yeah.
They tried.
And then his girlfriend.
God.
So yeah. So
I
there's,
forgot about that whole subplot.
there was
Holy
a
hell.
there was a
Holy
there was a
hell.
lot of death in the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Now that you
There's
bring that
also,
up,
like the deleted scene of his dad back at the tombstone. Okay, we'll get into it. I mean, this is
Yeah, we're getting
this
ahead
is
of
the kind
ourselves.
of rabbit hole. You know, so-
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll certainly get there because on this episode we are doing a Spider-Man retrospective. Cue the Spider-Man theme. I should have had that ready to go. I don't know why I
Eight-Legged
didn't.
Freaks.
Yeah.
Good movie. Oh,
Yeah.
Wait, that's
so
not a
we're-
Spider-Man movie? Wait, we're not including. Oh, darn it! Never mind.
No,
Okay,
but we're going to
whatever.
talk about the all of the Spider-Man feature-length movies that have been released to date. Starting with Raimi and working our way to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now out in theaters. So you
doing
can
very
go check
well.
that out. Doing
Yeah.
very well.
I called it. I called
Good job,
this
Ryan.
movie would
Good
do
job,
well.
Ryan.
No, honestly,
Yeah.
it's on record. If you go listen to the Awards Watch podcast, once you're done with this podcast, you can go listen to that. Summer movie draft that we do over there, where we pit our teams up against each other.
Uh-huh.
I was very adamant that Across the Spider-Verse get picked because I knew that it was going to make a ton of money,
Mm-hmm.
and it is now a 3.5 times multiplier from the original's opening weekend. So
Yeah.
not going to say your boy figured it out. I think I cracked the code. Spider-Man, popular.
Popular. Yeah, I was going to say, because if you listen to the podcast a week before the AW podcast, I said the same thing, but a week before Ryan. So there's
I think
that.
that's a web of lies.
Might
but,
be.
but I see your point. And, I raise you
Oh gosh.
fake news.
Raise you fake news, yeah. At any rate, yeah, I all of that to say, I don't think anyone is too surprised that
I was shocked.
the sequel to what was a very successful movie in 2018 is doing well 5 years later.
Yeah.
And of course, it being Spider-Man alone, that's gonna be
Animated
a big draw.
movie doing well in the summer.
Who would have thought?
It's out of school. They want to see something with the whole family.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't make any sense.
This
will
one
s-
feels different, though. I mean, it's
No,
doing
it does.
well, but it does
It's not like
feel
it's like
it's
in a
serious,
couple
but
of
it-
weeks
Yeah, it
when
does.
we're talking
feel
about
different.
Elemental, won't mean anything because that
Won't mean
movie
anything.
ain't gonna do no money. No money.
Nah,
Well,
I think people are
I-
just going to go see this again.
Yeah,
I'm gonna.
exactly.
I want to ask you this, Ryan,
Mm.
and maybe this is inappropriate because I know you don't come to these shows to talk about this, but
Oh God.
our
I know-
our review for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is out right now. You can watch that at YouTube or listen on Apple
I'm
Podcasts,
listening. I'm just
Spotify.
eating ice cream while we're doing it.
And one of the things that we talked about at the end of that review, because it's in the ether. People are talking about it.
Okay.
Could it land a nomination for Best Picture?
God,
What
this
does
feels
Ryan McQuaid have to say at said discourse?
This feels like a Christian Eulenberg question.
No, it was actually a
was
Brennan
actually-
Cassidy
yeah.
question.
Is this a Brendan
Yeah.
Cassidy question? Holy
Yeah. We both
I-
kind of
I-
got into it.
I don't know. Well, one, we have like 900 films still to release this year.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
bazillion
oh,
to
yeah.
go for sure.
I think that also too from the first half of the year, usually it's like one or two movies, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely it's one.
Yeah.
The general consensus is there's another movie out right now that like everybody's lost their mind over, and I see it pretty soon. And which is Celine Song's "Past Lives." People
Yeah.
are like
Yeah.
losing their ever loving mind over that, which is great. I can't wait to see it.
Same.
I think that
Yeah.
the problem is that okay, so when you're talking about a sequel getting nominated, it's very rare that the sequel gets nominated and the first one didn't.
True.
It's
True.
very rare that, and if you can make the case that Spider-Man, the Into the Spider-Verse was going to be nominated for Best Picture, you kind of need like some evidence to support that the Academy was going to go with that. Maybe like it gets in
Yeah.
a screenplay, or maybe it gets in song, or maybe it gets in visual effects or something outside of it. No, that didn't happen. It won every animated film, but they did it any category or whatnot throughout all the precursors. They didn't win anything other than that, and which is, I mean, obviously a shame. But it reminds me a lot of like, I mean, a movie last year got swept all the animated guilds, and it was directed by a man who has won multiple Oscars. That was literally the thing that's right over JD's shoulder. It was Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, very universally beloved film, and that movie didn't get nominated. It seems like the only time that animated films get nominated now is Disney or Pixar, and now every year's different. The expanded lineup's different. Now it's officially 10, and this movie is like 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, 87 on a Metacritic, which is great.
Yeah.
Especially for a movie like this, which is a part one thing as well. I worry about like Killers of the Flower Moon and The Color Purple, and I worry about Dune 2, and I worry about the Jonathan Glazer film, and I worry about whatever Fincher has, and what and
It's got competition.
It's got
and
so much
it's got
competition.
A lot of
It's like,
potential competition.
the fall is so. I honestly, I know we say this every year, but like the fall is so stacked this year with movies.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, for Christ's sakes, in a month and a half, there's Barbie and Oppenheimer. You know what I mean? Like,
And there's and like with last year with Top Gun Maverick, there's always one or two big, not necessarily summer movies, but blockbuster movies that will sneak in there, right?
Yeah.
It will always happen in some way, whether it's deserved or not. In a lot of cases, it is deserved. I think the reason why we brought this question up at the end of our review for Across the Spider-Verse is just the commentary around it is kind of similar to how we felt about Everything Everywhere All at Once when that came out. There was a lot of like just almost like universal praise for it. And they are similar kinds of movies, but one thing we didn't bring up, one thing we didn't bring up, and you make a great point, it is a sequel. We didn't talk about that, JD.
That is true. No.
Yeah. That does create a very unique case for it.
Yeah.
They got a cold case of sequelitis. Now, you mentioned
yeah.
Top Gun Maverick. It's a sequel that's like 30 years.
And nothing happened to the first one there?
Yeah.
I know it's been 30
so
years,
there's
but
the other
still.
side of that.
That
Yeah.
is that. But that also, it was like, it's got to also have something else to it than just being like, oh, it was a 3.5 time multiplier. It needs to be a cultural event. Because like a Black Panther and a Top Gun Maverick, they're exceptions to the rules because they were cultural touchstones of the year.
This seems
You know what I mean?
kind of close, though.
I mean,
far.
It's still early to
so
tell,
far.
but
It's
it could,
early, but so
it
far.
could go that way. And
It
I think
could
that's
turn
why we
that
brought
way.
it up as this question, because the way it's being embraced, it's reminiscent of other movies that have had those kind of cultural trajectories, right?
Yeah.
They usually
Like this
start
kind
off
of
with
reminds
this
me
kind
of the beginnings of Black Panthers. run.
Or it kind of reminds me of the beginnings of Parasite in some way. Now, it's like they're very different movies. They were embraced for very different reasons in different ways at different times, given when they premiered at what festivals and what premieres and whatnot. But the overall embrace for the film is it's leading to a potential for that trajectory. I feel like.
Guys, I really like this. I really liked Across the Spider-Verse. Very good movie.
Yeah.
I had a really good time. All right. Saw it with a bunch of normies, but that's beside the point. Normies are, for any of our listeners out there, those are the common folk. And
they're the muggles. The muggles of the movie world.
and they can be an absolute giant
muggles.
pain in the ass. Because and even at an Alamo Draft House, people were still talking, and I was like, shut up. But if I was a betting man, right now, I take the field. I wouldn't think it's getting in, because also too,
It's
like
fair.
I do think that there is also obviously animation bias that goes into these things too. Like a movie like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is a perfect movie for the Academy to like love. The production design, you
That's
know,
true.
they like stop motion animation before. Like you look at Fantastic Mr. Fox for a perfect example that got nominated in both adapted screenplay and in animated features. So like, you know, obviously Toy Story 3 gets in there, Up gets in there. You know, Pixar's done a good job. You can kind of make the case of like certain Pixar movies would have probably got in there if we had an expanded lineup.
Yeah.
It's really tough to say, because like the other thing is like there's 3 directors. The screenplay would probably have to get in there. So again, a very tough year for screenplays. Screenplay's always very tough.
Score.
Score would be a great one. I mean, I don't know if it was eligible, but like the fact that like Sunflower didn't get like an Oscar nomination if it was eligible for Into the Spider-Verse
was with that first one,
because that thing, like, talk about like, we don't talk about Bruno going really viral. Like that thing.
Yeah.
That was a big hit with that film.
That was huge.
Absolutely.
And a great song too.
Yeah.
But I don't know. One, it's also June. The Oscars are in March of next year.
Yeah, they're right around the corner.
Right around the corner.
But everything everywhere all at once
Don't
did
say
that. They went a full year.
Yeah.
True, but like at a certain point, one, I've always told you guys, the Oscars really try not to repeat themselves. They repeat themselves over the years, but not like literally the next year. They don't do that. And also too, like, that's the multiverse movie that's weirdly enough more in their angle than
they're gonna do 2 multiverse movies back to back.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, we're just gonna
I'm
give
not
it to
saying
that.
it should win like everything
I'm not
everywhere all
saying-
at once.
but
I'm
like,
just
even-
talking nominations here.
Because like, even if you look at something like Avatar, Big Jim, all right, it took like how many years in between those 2 films to get
13,
nominated?
I think.
Yeah,
You're talking
at
about
least.
5 years here, and the first one wasn't.
Yeah.
It's very rare. That's all I'll say. And then like also too, I would worry about like, the thing about it was, it's like I could kin it to like if it was to win or even the potential to get nominated, like almost the rationale of like why Dune didn't win, because like the detractors will say it's a part 1, so maybe part 2 would be our way to nominate it. And I think that honestly, that's probably where, you know, next year, where Beyond has a really good chance.
Yeah.
Because it's going to wrap up this
Kind of
like
the Lord
probably
of the Rings thing.
Yeah, kind of
Finally
like
gets
that.
over the hump. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys know that next year, so the movie comes out on March 29th, 2024, which by the way, birthday weekend for me. Expect presents from all of you.
Hey, you're getting a movie, so that's that.
Hey.
I got you $100 million movie. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think JD got me Beyond the Spider-Verse. Brendan got me Mickey 17, the new Bong Joon-ho film coming out.
Yeah,
this week.
they're on the same weekend. You're right.
Yeah.
So I raise you Barbie Oppenheimer, and I see you Beyond the Spider-Verse and Mickey 17. Which if you haven't read the book, Mickey 7, I believe is the title of it. That is the book that the Bong Joon-ho movie is based off of. You really should read it. It's really fascinating.
I heard good things.
Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, what are we here to talk about?
Anyway, thanks for listening to our Oscars
Martin
podcast.
Scorsese pretty good.
Yeah, look,
I think this is just a good like commentary and a good foreshadowing that it's probably gonna be a pretty competitive and interesting award season.
I'm sure this roller coaster movie will get in there. And no, I'm sorry.
Well, I just think it's funny, and I totally brought this on myself because if you go and listen to the end of that review, Brendan and I were, or at least I was certainly excited about the possibilities, and Daniel Pemberton, I made a huge case for that in my final thoughts. And so we left that episode with optimism and smiles, and then we bring it here, and Ryan's like, "Get out of here with that nonsense."
But he does bring up a great.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Part of the thing we talked about too, and we'll end this conversation soon, so we don't get down too much of this rabbit hole. But like, there is a sort of bias that I think the Academy has for like really like giving an animated film that type of leverage, because there is a separate category for it. But we have seen movies get nominated in the past for sure. I think one of the things we talked about is that there will be a time someday that an animated movie comes around and actually wins Best Picture. It will happen. I think it will happen someday. I'm not saying it's going to happen sometime soon or for this particular movie, but that I think is part of the narrative as to why maybe it is surrounding this movie from certain circles out there.
Honestly, the other thing I will say is if there was an animated movie that could get nominated this year, I don't think it is Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay. It's Elemental.
No, How Do I Live, I believe is the title.
Oh, Miyazaki's
last film. I could totally see a scenario where that's the one, because it is the last film from that master director, and it is a singular vision. At least like that's the thing about Up, and that's the thing about Toy Story. They're directed by singular visions. They're directed, like Across the Spider-Verse has 3 directors. Lord and Miller, essentially. I love that. I love this movie a lot. But Lord and Miller really are the driving forces because of their screenplay. That I think when you think about the movie, not to put down the directors, but they replaced the 3 directors from the first film for this film, and then these directors are carrying over for Beyond. I think that those guys are kind of interchangeable. I think that Lord and Miller are really the glue that kind of keep this whole thing together.
We talked about that in the review. You know I don't know if they're interchangeable in that sense more directly, because we'll talk about this
because it happened.
Well, no, we'll talk about this when we get to this retrospective as well. Is that Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse? I think they feel like very different movies. They carry completely different tones to me. I think a lot of that is because of the director changes.
Probably so, but I think that a lot of the Lord and Miller.
They're still there. Yeah, they're still there. They still carry.
They're all over this stuff. But last thing, JD, and then we can cut this off, because I know you 20 minutes on awards.
We got a lot of Spider-Man to talk about.
Like, it's my fault. Shit. I totally brought this upon us.
Is that I would hope that it does happen, because then that means that any movie could happen and get nominated, and it is a beloved film. It's just it goes back to, I've told JD this, and Brendan, I've told you this many years. Yeah. If you're asking me to put the faith of the world in the hands of the Academy, the same people that like a couple of years ago gave Green Book Best Picture,
they tend to kind of go back and forth.
They go back and forth a lot, and they really do a lot of dumb, pardon my words, shit. All right. And so again, like Everything Everywhere All at Once is such an anomaly.
So you're saying we need to look out for the coda of this year.
I'm telling you,
that's where
when in the pendulum swings, it usually swings back. Cool things don't happen all the time on a consistent basis. But you're saying that a multiverse animated sequel would get nominated
because it's that good, though.
I mean, it's so great. I'm not. It's not about me thinking that. See, this is the thing everyone always says every year. Ryan thinks that it shouldn't get nominated.
No, you're coming at it
bad.
No, you're thinking at it more from a
and I know you're not. You guys aren't saying that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that like people are going to hear this and go, "Oh, well, he hates this." No, I love the movie. What are you talking about?
I mean, everyone's got to jump to hyperbole, right?
I think
that's
so.
the way criticism works these days.
It's just about like, if they loved animated movies so much, why didn't they nominate Pinocchio? Why didn't they nominate Soul, which won for score? And won for animation? Why didn't they nominate that in 2020? Why didn't they nominate Inside Out, a movie JD loves and can have?
I thought they did. Like, why don't Inside Out?
They didn't.
I thought they did.
Nope.
Not for Best Picture.
Well, I know
Not for
they.
Best-
I mean, I know they nominated Up and Toy Story 3, but that's when
You mean for best score?
no for Best Picture.
Best
Oh.
Picture, the only 3 animated films that have been nominated are Beauty and the
Beauty and the
Beast,
Beast, Up, and
Toy Story 3,
3.
and
Yeah.
Up.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
it.
yeah, you're right.
That is it. So
Yeah.
I don't have faith in them. I never have. And
Well,
you can't. How dare
and
you
for-
try to
and for
think that
that-
I will?
And for that same reason, I don't think they're going to nominate Miyazaki either, because we've been down that road with him. And he directed a masterpiece in 2013, and they still said, no, thank you. We're done
No,
with you.
that is true,
Goodbye,
but
happy
I-
retirement.
But I will say that I think that there's the potential more of it because the voting body has turned a little bit more international.
It has
and-
evolved a lot since.
True.
And
2013,
like
that's
a
for
lot
sure.
of foreign directors have gotten their stuff in there.
That's,
So
that's
that's the reason why I would consider that a little bit more. But
Yeah.
which is
the movie has
understandable.
to come out.
At any rate, let's go ahead and transition to what we're
Anyway,
really here to
Spider-Man
talk
1.
about. And that is Spider-Man. Doing a little retrospective here. Let's get to Sam Raimi. He directed a little movie in 2002. It is aptly called Spider-Man.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this film? What do you guys think about the Raimi films?
Never heard of it.
Do we want to lump all the Raimi films into this conversation here, or do we just want to go? I feel like
I don't think we have to go film by film. I think we can kind of.
it could be kind of loose. I think we can kind of talk about the Raimi trilogy as a whole, and maybe say like which ones we like more than others. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear Ryan's thoughts because I think correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think your favorite of the 3 Raimi films is the first one.
I used to think that a lot, but guys, I
Oh.
evolve. All right.
Really? Is this
I
is this plot
evolve.
development here? Is this character development?
Listen, guys.
Oh, it's
as the
Spider-Man 3. That's his favorite one.
As the
Okay.
number 1 Big Jim stan around here, all right, I can tell you that I evolve over time.
That is true.
That is
Last year was
we have-
incredible.
You guys have
So incredible.
You guys can never say anything about me.
That is no, you're definitely right.
Spider-Man 2 is the best one, but Spider-Man 1 is really good. I would
I
say
agree.
Yeah.
I would say they're pretty on par. Like they are a 1-2 punch that rarely happens in comic book movies where I actually kind of akin the Raimi trilogy a lot, and I know Brendan will probably maybe disagree with this, maybe I don't know if JD will, but I
Okay.
think that I equate him a lot to like the Nolan Batman trilogy, where the first 2 are such great movies, and I think that they're very comparable, and one's a little bit
don't
slightly
disagree.
better
I don't
than the
disagree.
other. And then the third movie is an absolute calamity upon epic proportions, and you
Yeah.
kind of just are
Honestly,
baffled by
it's a good comparison.
you're baffled
Yeah.
by decisions because Nolan was dealt a really terrible deck of cards because of the loss of Ledger and everything. But my God, what kind of peyote was Sam Raimi on when he made a truly wild film? It is a wild blockbuster made.
Which one? Spider-Man 3?
Yeah, in 2007, the year of cinema, 2007,
2007,
Spider-Man 3 kicked off the year where we had like a ton of threequels, right? Because we had like that. And
Yeah.
The Ultimatum.
The major difference here is that Spider-Man
know.
3 was more or less directed by Sony and
no shit.
not yeah. So just to be clear, this is not Raimi's fault.
I wanna
it
know-
kind of is, but it kind of isn't.
Who was behind the camera when they decided that Peter Parker needed to dance like that? Like,
You know what? I don't hate that scene. I'm just gonna say it right now.
it's
It's
bad.
not
Come on,
great.
bro.
It's bad.
I don't like
But
it either.
I don't hate it. I
And then
laugh
this
at
is
it
an
for reasons that I
intervention.
don't think it really should earn. But I mean, it's a wackadoo
so bad it's
movie.
good.
It's a wackadoo movie. Spider-Man 3 is. I
Yeah.
think I'm the highest on that film of the 3 of us talking here, but I don't think it's very good. You could see the seeds of where that movie could have been great, though. And I think a lot of that comes down to like there is still at least some thematic unity between all of the characters and villains there. Like you can at least explain their motivations and what drives them. So there's at least homework being done to create some type of movie there. But it was certainly interfered by a studio that needed some character that Raimi didn't even want in the first place. And it's a shame that the movie suffered from it because the first 2 movies are great. They're quite great. I think that first one is so great because it has such a sense of sincerity to it, which is what we want from all of these movies. And it actually cares about the innocence of Peter Parker himself. And Spider-Man 2, I know you want to talk about this as well, JD. We've constantly called that film perhaps the greatest superhero movie ever made.
Mhm.
I tend to go between Spider-Man 2 and Batman Returns as my two favorite superhero movies ever made. But I love the distinction between the two because Spider-Man 1 feels so comic booky. It's almost like a live action cartoon, and I love that about it. But Spider-Man 2 almost feels like this. It almost has a vibe of like a Technicolor romance from the 1950s, like a Douglas Sirk film at times. And I think a lot of that is Bill Pope's cinematography, the colorful hues, the way it treats its setting of New York as a literal character in the movie. It actually has a sense of honesty and trust in its drama. It doesn't happen very often with movies like that, especially superhero movies. So it's wonderful. And it's a shame that Spider-Man 3 wasn't as good as it could have been. And because it could have really tied things up nicely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was actually looking at my rankings, and I did need to move things around because I was a big old, I was a big dum dum, and I didn't move things around.
I mean, yeah,
well,
but for a while you did have that first Spider-Man
I did,
film
and
as
then
your favorite. But and it's it's not hard to necessarily disagree with that because like there is such a, like I said, a sincerity to that one that really kicked things off that you just have to respect.
Honestly, the thing
Yeah.
that kind of changed it was like, weirdly enough, was No Way Home, because like
Oh,
the
interesting.
stuff. Well, one, I mean, obviously for all of us, like Maguire is our Spider-Man. Like he's the guy that like we saw in the spandex, and we were like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, I want to have webs come out of my body weirdly and almost make like the UT symbol in order to get the webs out. Like it was like, oh, okay, this is like a, Peter Parker would have been a Longhorn sort of thing.
Mhm.
Trademarking that and don't care what anyone else says. But like, no, great. The first film like was truly one of the first comic book movies I think we all ever saw in theaters. And then like the second one, I just
Yeah.
remember being, I mean, the second one's great because like most great comic book movies of that era, like the Batman Returns film that you're mentioning, Brendan, or
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of some others, but like, even like the Lord of the Rings movies, I've talked about this before, the sense of like these directors that have horror sensitivities, throwing those in there, like the
That's a
operation
great
sequence.
point. Yeah. Horror
is
directors need to do more epic blockbusters like this.
yeah, because then
I
they
love
allow
that.
they allow audiences then on other genres to have those sensitivities come in and
Yeah. Well, look
without
at Hellboy.
realizing.
The Hellboy movies, like with
Yeah,
Guillermo
like
del Toro. It's another
without
example.
without realizing that they're watching a horror movie. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To help
Yeah.
the normies out. But I mean, it's not like Spider-Man 2 is not like it's not in my top 5 of comic book movies. Superhero movies, maybe, but then like you're adding like The Incredibles and other stuff in there. I don't think that it's a bad take. This is where I've always fought you guys. I'm like, I don't think it's the greatest, but like that's a personal, subjective sort of thing.
Yeah. There are things about
Um,
Spider-Man 2 that we respond to more than maybe some other
Yeah.
people do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, like I know it's like we're talking about two basic choices here between Spider-Man 2 and what I believe which is The Dark Knight, and it's like those are like the most basic arguments that I think people can make. Like it's like, oh, what kind of fruit do you like? Apples and oranges? All right, cool. And it's not like
Yeah.
you like a kiwi or anything, anything
Right.
crazy.
Yeah.
But like, but no, I think that those two movies they did exactly what I think a lot of comic book movies don't do. And JD, I'm not trying to go down this rabbit hole. I'm sure we will when we talk about the MCU movies, but those movies don't have the emotional depth that I think that those first two Raimi movies do. And those moments of real quiet, like I think of the scene in Spider-Man 2 where Aunt May is packing up her house.
Yeah. That's one of the best
that's
scenes in this entire retrospective. What we
I mean,
talked
Oh,
about.
yeah, for sure.
It's brilliant, just devastating. I mean, the coffee scene alone, at the coffee house. I mean, just any scene with MJ and Peter is really just kind of remarkable. But then yeah, like the villains are really really great. James Franco still exists in here, which is fine. I don't really care for him in these. I just think but he also plays a really good kind of.
I like him in the
throwaway-
second one. He's I mean, because he's kind of like this whiny brat in the second one, which is kind of the point. So like, I hate to use the excuse that the person gives a bad performance because it's supposed to be bad, but I'm kind of willing to say that about James Franco in Spider-Man 2. He's kind of riding the high of who his father was for this company, as if he has something to prove, and does it so desperately that he just sounds like a whiny kid. I kind of like that element of James Franco, at least in these movies.
Yeah. I guess just to kind of get into my thoughts on this trilogy,
We ran out of time. We got to move to the time.
We're still doing okay. Still doing okay.
What a real.
I know, what a shame it is.
I'm kidding.
But no, I mean, ironically, I'm really close to your thoughts on this, Ryan, because I think Spider-Man, that first film from 2002, and Spider-Man 2, I don't think the disparity between them isn't all that much for me. No. And thanks to my son, who's been Spider-Man crazy over the last year or so, I've seen all three of Raimi's films a couple of different times over the last 12 months. And
imagine having to watch 3 a couple of times. Good Lord.
Well, I'll get to that here in a minute. But I do think that first Spider-Man is maybe a little underrated, because people talk about Spider-Man 2 as being the best of this trilogy. And if you're in Brendan and I's camp, it's one of the best to do it in this genre. But that first one, I think, is genuinely really very, good. Very good. I think it is. It's great. And you think about what came before, and there really wasn't much in the genre that had, set a formula. There was that first X-Men, I think, that came out 2 years previously.
Yeah, it was like Blade.
That first Spider-Man. Blade. And that was pretty much it. There was a lot that came out that, wasn't very good. And what Sam Raimi brings to these films, and I think fairly or unfairly, it's also hard to separate what those movies are when you consider them through the lens of what we get today. Now, I've been on record on this show and on social media of being a fan of the MCU. And what I like about the MCU is very different than what I like from Sam Raimi or Christopher Nolan. The MCU, to its credit, is not trying to mimic Sam Raimi. It is not trying to mimic Christopher Nolan. They have their own formula, they have their own identity, and they stick to it. And I like those movies for what they are. Now, that said, what they've inspired over the last decade in terms of, let's say, the CGI soup of blockbusters that we get these days, and then you funnel that retrospectively into what these Sam Raimi films are, or even, because I've been on this kick lately, those first 2 or 3 Michael Bay Transformers movies, I started to have a new appreciation for them visually because of what we get today. And maybe he's also partially to blame for what we get over the last 10 years.
At least there's a tactility to his movies.
Yes.
There's something.
And that's the thing, because say what you will, Michael Bay does not care at all about story and character. We know that. However, he has a visual eye that is undeniable. And you watch that first Transformers, or even as bad as the second one is, and the third one, he is committed to practicality. And it is undeniable to see the actual cars being destroyed and buildings being
blowing
blown
up stuff. He's really blowing up stuff.
He's truly blowing up stuff.
Between pyramids and brain cells from the audience members. He's blowing up stuff.
Exactly. He's just blowing things up. And that commitment to pragmatism does stand out comparatively to what we get now, where so much of it is done through CGI, and it all becomes like a singular, messy soup, if you will. And so, so taking that idea to Sam Raimi, and then you inject those Raimiisms, that horror background that you guys are talking about, which is infused so seamlessly into these 3 movies, that from a visual perspective, there's so much to love about these three films, especially the first two. And I do love how that couples with the performances, what we get from Willem Dafoe in that first one. I just love how over the top and campy he is.
And Dafoe's so good in that movie.
He's so good. I love
You
him.
know how much I sacrificed.
It's so good.
I saw that video online the other day and I was like, God damn, he's good in that movie.
I'm gonna get
formula.
you, Spider-Man.
I'm gonna get you, Spider-Man.
I love it. It's just really, really great,
like,
really fun.
When Aunt May's praying and
say it, say it.
Oh my!
And
I
then he
forget
just
who I forget who
through,
wrote
he
this.
just blasts through her house. It's like
I forget who
good.
I forget who wrote this. It was on someone's Letterboxd review. It may have been like Patrick Willems or something like that. Someone that actually has a lot of followers on Letterboxd and wrote for a review of Spider-Man No Way Home that Kevin Feige must have saw that first Spider-Man and said, we're never going to get another villain in the MCU as good as Green Goblin. Let's just bring him back.
And look,
that's
I don't
the best thing
just
when
like
he's
that thing.
looking at Alfred Molina in that movie. He goes,
Yeah.
Norman isn't here, honey. And I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
all right, I'll care to venture what the next hour and a half looks like because it's not going to get any better than this.
Nope,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that there's no denying that in that first Spider-Man film and what we get with Doc Ock and Spider-Man 2. So like I really like these performances. Tobey Maguire I think is really fantastic, especially when mining through the emotional complexities of that character. And even though some of the CGI is outdated, I think the way it kind of blends with the pragmatism that Raimi brings to it, it still holds up very well. Like it's still very effective.
Yeah.
And it's never too jarring. And so like, and from a storytelling perspective, I think, it keeps things pretty simple. It keeps things fun, but it does delve into the nuances of that character enough that it sets the foundation perfectly for what we'll get in Spider-Man 2, which I do think if we're doing the whole Batman comparison, I am with you, Ryan, that Spider-Man 2, like The Dark Knight, is slight improvement. But for me, Spider-Man 2 is my favorite superhero movie to date. I am that high on it. Yeah. And it's not just the Raimi-isms of it. I think Doc Ock is one of the best villains that we've seen in the genre, like with what we see in Batman Returns with the Penguin. I think there's a lot to that character in terms of empathy that is brought to it, where you could argue he's not even really a villain in that film, even though it certainly plays out that way from an action standpoint. And just the action in it, I think, is fantastic. And so...
Yeah,
the level of texture.
Heck, Batman's more of a villain in Batman Returns than Catwoman or Penguin is.
Yeah. And
then what I love about I think that Spider-Man 2 and The Dark Knight do kind of share a little bit of DNA, though. I think their villains actually, their villains obviously have different motivations, but I think of the questions that both Nolan and Raimi are asking of their characters, of their main characters, of their protagonists, and really also to essentially, in my opinion, make these characters have to grapple with the weight of what it means to be a superhero.
Sure.
You see, that scene and the sort of the flat and like the afterlife sort of thing with Uncle Ben, but really the struggle that Peter has throughout the film is truly extraordinary. It's a lot like what Bruce has to deal with at times, especially after, Rachel's passing in The Dark Knight. Yeah. It's this thing of that Alfred has to explain to him, and then kind of Uncle Ben has to explain to him. It's like the world essentially needs you. You need to find it within yourself to accept that. And then, of course, that the Aunt May scene sort of cements it all home for him. But then I think also, too, both films have these great moments where the citizens of New York and Gotham make a choice to take back a little bit of their city, to embrace this hero and essentially save them. I think that scene on the subway where I mean, there's the line that always kind of gets me is, "Gee, he looks just like my kid."
Yeah.
It's one of the guys
Yeah.
there, and they sort of carry him. Yeah, it's
That is the scene where I often cite why I like Spider-Man 2 as much as I do. And it's like, because in a situation like that, it avoids what could have been traditional conflict for a superhero movie where an identity is revealed and it becomes a burden and a problem for that individual. But here it becomes a sense of respect and care that you don't often see. And I really appreciate that.
Then
Yeah,
you get Defoe coming back and avenge me. You know what I mean? You're like,
Yeah.
hell yeah, this movie
well,
rolls.
Yeah. And the other
Yeah.
thing I love about Spider-Man 2 that I don't think people talk enough about, and at least I feel like if there's any criticism directed at the film, it comes down to this. I love the relationship between Tobey Maguire and Kirsten Dunst in Spider-Man 2.
I think they're good.
I think the Mary Jane Peter Parker dynamic is like that's why I keep comparing it to like this Technicolor Romance by Douglas Sirk, because it kind of has some of those same tonal similarities. I feel like of a doomed romance that it's kind of got that similar narrative device that you see in a lot of those old romantic movies,
Which I think the first film establishes well.
It does, yeah. It establishes and it really sets the foundation for
Yeah.
where Spider-Man 2 takes it as a priority. That's the interesting thing. Spider-Man 2 is a really interesting and powerful movie without any of the superhero isms even in it. Like there are things
Yeah.
around it that are really like it's a great drama outside of just the superhero isms. But I do love that the film is willing to give Mary Jane at least a little bit of agency and take ownership in her choice at the end, which has, I think, one of the greatest final shots of any superhero movie ever. And a lot of that is
looking out the window.
Yeah, but then you've got that chord that Danny Elfman's score hits. It's this like minor
so
chord that
good.
has this sense of despair, like, ooh, this might not have been a good idea.
Yeah, it's
And
almost
it-
like The Graduate, a little
It
bit.
kind of is, actually. That's
Yeah.
a great comparison. It does have a Graduate-like ending. And it gives the responsibility to Mary Jane then. And kind of makes the movie just as much hers as it was Peter Parker's. So I love that transition.
Yeah,
I
and that's
mean,
the thing about Raimi, right? Is that he gives space for the character work and that drama to breathe as much as he does the superhero stuff. And we don't always get that these days, which is another element as to why those movies, I think, hold up extremely well. I mean, you're talking
Agreed.
about the romance, and I do agree with you. I think that's a compelling part of it. We mentioned Dr. Octavius in that film, and his relationship with Peter throughout that film, I think, is really great. There's a couple of conversations they have that is some of the best of that movie. That's a lot of where that empathy comes from. And we come to find out that, Octavius isn't trying to light the world on fire. If anything, he's wanting, like, from his perspective, he thinks he's genuinely trying to improve it, and then something goes terribly wrong. And the character work, the performance, and all of that is great. We mentioned the moment earlier of Aunt May packing up her house, and she has that line about how there's a hero in all of us, and how it gives us honesty and strength and nobility, and it gives us this steady quality that
Stop it, JD.
makes us better. I know we're all
Son
gonna
of a bitch. Don't do it.
It's so good.
Don't do it, McQuaid.
And you think about when she says that, where is Peter at that time emotionally? Like, he's on the verge of giving up the superhero thing because it's starting to overwhelm him as he's trying to balance being the hero that he thinks he has to because of the responsibility ethos that comes with being Spider-Man, and also wanting to have a life. So like that, the hero and humanity element of Peter has really come to a head, and he is really struggling. He's at his most vulnerable. And at that time, here comes Aunt May being the hero herself, ironically, given the line that she says, and it completely changes the course of that movie.
Rosemary Harris, so great.
So good.
She's almost 100 years old. I did not even realize that. Like she's still kicking, and
Get her on the screen. Come on, Feige. Dump truck of money. Let's go.
I would see
Do
that.
or don't, a dare or don't. The choice is yours. No, I'm just kidding. No, I will also say too, these movies, don't talk about them enough, but like they got great humor behind them. I think Raimi
They're funny. Yeah.
Just always have like a really great humor. I mean, obviously not just with the injections of like, the cameos of Bruce Campbell, and I think some of the stuff with Peter, like on his jobs or whatnot, but really also too, and this is where, there's no one else that can play this part is J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson, who's
Oh gosh.
So
I
good.
mean, so good in all these. And I mean, when Mary Jane runs out and of the wedding, and he basically like asks his wife, call the caterer. You know what I mean? To cancel the catering. Like, you're thinking about your money in this moment, dude.
Of course,
like,
but of course he is.
So
It's
good.
consistent
I
with
mean,
the character. Yeah.
And you're right. The fact that Spider-Man 2, which could open with this epic action sequence, chooses to open its action sequence with Spider-Man trying to deliver a pizza. Like that is literally the opening set piece of Spider-Man 2. It's incredible. It's an incredible choice.
But then I think also too of like a scene that I find really tender in Spider-Man 2, but then it's like completely then wasted in 3 is the neighbor and the piece of cake and the glass of milk. That scene, I think that's like, it's not, there's not going to be romance there, obviously, but it's just such an innocent moment of kindness. You know what I mean?
I like the way Spider-Man 3 at least tries to recontextualize the relationship with the landlord a little bit. I actually like that scene in Spider-Man 3, but again, it does kind of make you think, well, there's more that could have happened with that whole family dynamic and Peter's relationship with both of them, which does feel a little incomplete.
Yeah, I gotta tell you this too. As we move over to the 3,
I don't think we have much to say about 3, but
well, I think like 3 is so interesting because like it has things that you look at and you go, that could have really worked. Like, and it's kind of, it does. Like, I think the stuff with Sandman truly is
mostly
the best
good.
Stuff in the,
it's
the best stuff of the film. I think the Topher Grace of it all. No, thank you.
I don't mind the idea of having.
I don't mind the
the fact that he's a direct mirror image of Peter Parker himself. So I kind of get that. I just was Topher Grace maybe the right person for that.
No, I was gonna say I think he's miscast.
Yeah,
maybe
he's a little miscasty. And I think then the relationship dynamics then of Peter and Mary Jane in the film, I don't know what the hell they were doing with that, but that feels so just, it does not equal what the 2 films before it set up. It feels like it's such a mess.
The problem is the Harry Osborn of it all. That's
the Harry Osborn, the Gwen Stacy of it all. Like entering these new,
like we often talk about
Elizabeth. I mean, my God,
we often talk about Venom and the insert of Venom against Sam Raimi's wishes being the biggest problem of that movie, but I don't think it is. I mean, maybe it was the start of the film's many problems, but I still think the biggest problem is the handling of Harry Osborn, James Franco's character. And it's a big part of the movie. That's really my biggest problem. Now, if maybe the film focused on him as the primary villain, then maybe there's something that could have worked there because there's more time to develop that. But but that's the thing. It's 6 movies in one movie is how it feels.
Yeah.
It's so overstuffed that it crumbles on itself by the end. And it doesn't, like, Harry's redemption arc doesn't mean anything. Sandman's sort of redemption arc, that feels the closest to a Raimi villain in that movie. Someone that is completely just kind of like the audience you sympathize. I sympathize with Sandman. Also great effects, honestly. Like when he first becomes Sandman, he's trying to like get up, and the effects there, they may be dated or whatnot from what I remember, but when I watched it a couple of years ago, I remember thinking, damn, that's like really kind of a smart way of a character to try to have to build themselves up, and it's so vulnerable. But the sort of symbiote Venom, attacking gets in Peter and turns into emo Peter and all that other stuff. It's so like, and the problem with it is, and it just blows my mind about Sony, is that like they blamed it on Raimi, and it's like, no. Like this is all your fault. You tried to create like 7 different things. You didn't let him do exactly what he did in the first 2 movies, which was invent the damn genre and template that essentially the next year the MCU would start dominating with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me wonder if Sam Raimi purposefully put it in there poorly and did a bad job with it because of how Sony demanded it.
I
don't know. Like, does that make a good movie out of it? Does that make me respect it more? Not necessarily, but it kind of makes me wonder if there was a deliberate choice to make it as bad as it was.
I mean,
because he was dealt a terrible hand.
I mean, yeah, but his next choice after that was Oz the Great and Powerful. So, I mean, it's not like I can give him like
when did Drag Me to Hell came out again? Was Drag Me to Hell I forget when that came out.
Or maybe it was Drag Me to Hell. I'm sorry.
I think that was in between Spider-Man 3 and Oz.
Man, I gotta tell you,
because Spider-Man 3 was 2007 and Oz was 2013, right?
Yeah, Drag Me to Hell was 2009, I think.
So
I gotta tell you, Oz the Great and Powerful.
Great movie.
Not a very powerful movie.
One of those experiences. I will truly say this on record. When I was in the theater, I started thinking, God, humanity is lost. Like it is.
We lose Sam Raimi. That's the problem.
It's truly one of like those experiences.
Way worse movies than that.
No, it was bad. I mean,
I'm not saying it's great, but
I think you can watch that in segments and maybe it's better. But like in a theater, trapped, like that's what it felt like. It felt like
your hands were webbed to the seats.
I understood some of the openings. I understood some of the opening sequences in Zero Dark 30 when I was watching that movie.
Oh my God.
It was a bit rough.
At any rate, so my thoughts on Spider-Man 3. You know, I mentioned earlier that I had rewatched all 3 of these in the last year with my son. And if we circle back to, what was that, last week and also episode 532, we did these Disney Power Rankings. And there was a few movies brought up in those conversations where I was like, you know what? I was initially tepid on these films. And then on rewatches, I came to really like them a lot. So when we circled back to Spider-Man 3 last year, I was hoping to have that same experience again. Now, I haven't seen this in a long time.
Yeah, I know where you're
Maybe
going
it's better than I remembered it. No, that film is still really not good.
I was going to say, did you go the opposite direction with this?
Yeah, pretty much. I kind of went reverse course. And you're right. It's one thing that it's overstuffed. And I do agree with your guys' criticisms of the film in that regard. And that alone is enough to be frustrated. But I think to amplify my frustrations is a lot of the contrivances of that film that either inadvertently or purposefully undermine the previous 2 films. For example, and you were talking, Ryan, about Sandman, and I agree that the idea of the character, the empathy of the character, it's there. The foundations of a good story with that character is there. However, as the film unfolds, what do we find out about him? Oh, and spoiler alert for our 2007 movie, it turns out he's the one that killed Uncle Ben. Yeah. And all of a sudden, everything is recontextualized, and that choice undermines the progression and the growth of him in the first movie, which is really good. Like, we didn't need to recontextualize that. It again, maybe inadvertently, but it does disrupt what was so good about that first film. Agreed. So, like, to have the character already in this film with all of these other characters that are introduced, that is a problem on its own. But then to have these contrivances, I think is where my true frustration really lies with it all. I mean, you could argue the same thing with Franco and Harry Osborn. Like, he's such a big part of the first 2 movies, given his relationship with Peter. Why are we writing him? Why is he not a bigger part of this movie? And why are we writing him the way we are? Like, we just
give him amnesia.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's so dumb. And it feels like a complete disservice to the progression of that character in those first 2 movies.
Yeah.
And so again, whether it be a Sony thing or I don't know, whatever the problem is, wherever that root is, I mean, to have all of these new characters, that's a problem. And to be fair, I don't know how you write around that if that's what you're mandated to do. Yeah. But the contrivances and the disservice of it all is where the real problems of that film lie, I think, more than anything else.
To be fair, Spider-Man 3 was the third or the second worst threequel that summer, because Rush Hour 3 does exist. So,
Funny enough, I've never seen Rush Hour 3.
you never seen Rush Hour 3?
No, I've seen the first
I
two.
don't
for
remember
you.
anything
Good for
about
you.
it.
Really,
don't-
they go to
I
Paris.
like the first two.
Where did they go?
They go to like Paris, I think.
I
okay.
don't remember that at
So
all.
there were 5 threequels. It was the summer of threequels. Okay, you had Spider-Man 3, you had Rush Hour 3, you had Ocean's 13,
Great film.
you had Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End.
I still will go to bat for it.
Same.
Masterpiece rules.
Yeah.
And then the Bourne Ultimatum,
Okay,
which
I liked it.
absolutely
Okay.
slaps.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's some
So
really
they're
good
mostly
ones in
good
there.
stuff. That's mostly
Yeah.
good.
Mostly good stuff.
Some good threequels there.
I like Ocean's 13. I think it's really good. I think it's not as good as the first two, but it's still a really good, fun movie.
My second
And then,
favorite of them.
And then yeah,
I
then
think it's pretty
there's,
good.
Spider-Man 3 and Rush Hour 3. Yeah.
And then we also get Transformers. Michael Bay circling it back to him.
Yeah, that's yeah. We went down that rabbit hole.
Who would have thought a Spider-Man episode was going to have a theme on Michael Bay?
Damn,
I know.
I had to tell you, I've seen the trailers for that new movie, JD. Good luck to you, because I'm not going
Thank
to
you.
it. I stopped at 4. I couldn't take it anymore. I can't. Do it
Well,
anymore.
I will say this, and then we can move on with the Spider-Man conversation. I am excited and also hesitant for this new movie. Again, so like Transformers was my thing. That and Spider-Man, ironically,
Yeah.
were my two things when I was my son's age. So I am obsessed with it, and getting to rewatch a lot of the movies over the weekend with him was certainly a treat. And again, I've come to have a new appreciation for the Bay films because of the visual nature he brings to it. However, by 5, I think it's fair to say we were all done with the Bayformers at that point, including Michael Bay himself. He clearly did not give a rat's ass about The Last Night or whatever it's called.
I'll never forgive him for this.
And nobody went to see that movie. Like, nobody cared. I really liked Bumblebee a lot when that came out a few years ago. I recently revisited that one. It's good. That is a good movie. And the new animation, I think it revitalizes the Transformers films, because you can really see a lot more detail than what Michael Bay brought to it. And so I think this new reboot of sorts will be better on the whole, like from a storytelling standpoint and maybe even from an action standpoint. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to be reserved about as well. So we'll see. We'll see. But I guess I'm a little optimistic about it, I guess.
Well, speaking of reserved,
A little
the Amazing
optimistic
Spider-Man
prime,
films.
if you will.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, optimistic.
Speaking of reserve, now we're going to transition to the Marc Webb movies, who I think was only hired because his last name is Webb.
All right, guys, let's talk about the film Dungeons and Dragons that came out. What was that, a few months ago now?
Honor Among Thieves. Let's specify Honor Among Thieves.
Sorry,
Not
I
talking
forgot.
Lead
about
titles,
late
JD,
90s.
come
Yeah,
on.
we're not talking about the game Dungeons and Dragons. I guess you're right. I should have been more
Sorry,
clear on
folks.
that.
There needs to be more honor among these thieves right here.
Yeah, clearly. Yes, we needed to talk about it. I liked the film. Did you guys like it? Ryan, you liked it, right?
I liked
Ryan
it.
really
I
liked
thought
it,
was-
yeah.
I thought it was funny.
I know,
It was a fun
yeah.
movie.
I was mixed
Yeah.
on it, but I know a lot of people really did find it very refreshing and very exciting, especially in the landscape of modern blockbuster filmmaking. And that's courtesy of the fact that it's directed by the same duo who made Game Night. And if you like that film, a lot of those same comedic isms make their way into this movie, which a lot of people found very refreshing.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I laughed out loud, and not just with some of the dialogue. Some of the visuals in that film are wild.
There is a
Insane.
musical sequence of sorts that did have me in stitches that becomes literally disorienting. I'll
Yes,
simply
very.
say that.
I love how
yeah.
that's going around on social media. That is,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
fantastic. Chris Pine doing Chris Pine things, which is why we love him. Michelle Rodriguez in the film as well. Hugh Grant, gotta love a little Hugh Grant in our lives. He's really playing it up in that film. And it is available right now for to purchase on Blu-ray.
Yeah.
It has been on demand for some time, but now it is available on Blu-ray, and we have 5 of them to give away. 5 of them.
That is right.
Which is very exciting. So how can you get one of these Blu-rays? Well,
yeah.
one of 2 things. We could do a social media giveaway as we do, or we could have everyone DM Ryan and tell him why you love The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oh.
If you do that, maybe that's how we get people to enter the contest.
You know what?
This
What do you guys
sounds like a trap.
You know what? I'm actually down for it, to be fair. Let's do it.
Are you?
I'm gonna be like, those are gonna be some quick mutes.
That's who you know to just get out of your.
JD,
out
I
of your
muted
timeline.
5
Yeah.
people. Give them the Blu-ray to a good movie.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we won't do that.
No.
We'll spare Ryan the DMs. But
Damn.
if you follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we'll have some. We'll put out a tweet this week as far as how you can participate and enter said contest and be eligible to win one of those 5 Blu-rays for Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I got it right that time.
You did.
So again, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just search InSession Film. You'll find us in all those places and enter to win a DVD or Blu-ray, rather, for the film. The InSession Film Podcast is brought to you by our lovely friends over at First Time Watchers. Right now, we're in the middle of doing a Spider-Man retrospective. And I got to say, like this, fellas, there's a lot of different eras with Spider-Man, and the quality can certainly change. And that's what's made the journey of Spider-Man weird at times. And I got to say, it's pretty similar to First Time Watchers. It's a weird thing with First Time Watchers. You never know what you're going to get as far as what they're doing and what they're up to.
You could say it's a bit, surprising at times. They might not agree all the time, which makes it kind of a web slingy kind of a vibe that they have there. Either way, it makes their show very entertaining, and they're great supporters of our show, a podcast you have to check out if you love movies, hosted by Tim Walter and Hermano. And even when they don't always agree, they all have a web slinging knowledge of movies. I think we can at least say that.
They do. And oftentimes they talk about weird movies that they've seen, such as what we talked about last week. I had never heard of the movie that they reviewed. This week, though, they talked about What's Up, Doc? Which is at least a movie that I know. So there's that.
Haven't seen it, but I know of it.
But I know of it.
I don't know, Ryan, have you seen it? You've seen everything, at least
Good
of
movie.
the 3 of us.
Good movie.
All right, Ryan likes it.
I see way too many movies.
You see a lot of movies.
Yes.
You see a lot of
What's
movies.
Up, Doc? Actually, really good movie. Underrated. You guys should watch it. Really good.
Okay.
All right. Definitely go and check that out and listen to the review from First Time Watchers. It was a rousing conversation. It was really great.
Absolutely. But as we're alluding to, they tend to pick out movies that they've not only never seen, which is kind of the gimmick of their show, First Time Watchers, but they'll usually pick something obscure that we've never heard of, right? I mean, that's kind of the common thing with them. We often joke about them picking movies from like the 80s, these like obscure horror comedy movies of sorts that really shouldn't ever be discussed on a movie podcast, and yet they do it anyway. And that's what makes their show very unique. They'll also discuss other movies that they've caught up with lately, and maybe some other movie trailers that have come out that are worth noting too. And we urge you to keep listening to them actively because they're closing up shop pretty soon. They're closing up shop, getting close to 500 episodes. That's going to be their stopping point. They only have a few more episodes to go, so only a few more weeks, and they're calling it quits, sadly.
It is very sad, which is why I was going to say that as you listen to their show, as you go and check them out, pretty soon, very much like what we're doing here with Spider-Man, you'll have to be doing a First Time Watchers retrospective.
Yeah,
you have to go back,
go back to the archives. 500 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a smart show. It's really great. Where can we find them on the internet?
You can check them out at firsttimewatchers.podbean.com. You can hit them up on Twitter at First Time Watchers and on Facebook by simply searching First Time Watchers.
And go subscribe to them on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, please leave them a review. Let them know how much you love and adore their show. At the end of your review, we ask that you leave a little hashtag so they know we sent you to them. And this week, I guess we can just simply go with the hashtag, What's Up, Tim? Why are you guys leaving? Please come back.
Please
Maybe
come
that's
back.
too long.
Long hashtag.
That's all.
I think
What's up, Tim?
Hey,
All right.
at least they'll know that it definitely came from us then.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And that's the whole point of it. But either way, go check them out. We know you'll love them. Again, that's First Time Watchers.
500
It's right
Days
there.
of Summer.
Sometimes you just got to do
500
it.
Days of Summer, truly one of those movies where he was
Yeah,
going to call his
and-
shot
and I'm
wherever he
sure-
wanted.
I'm sure Sony saw that movie and thought the dynamic between Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel, we want that romantic center for our movie.
Yeah.
For our
And
reboot
that's-
of Spider-Man.
I mean, maybe that's
know
where
what
you
they
should have
got?
had two
That's where the-
directors. Because I do think those films are very effective as a rom-com. As a Spider-Man movie, maybe
Yeah.
not so much. Maybe that's
When
where you
Andrew
bring in someone else.
When Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone are together on the screen, or
It's-
green screen, wherever you want to call some
Yeah.
of the sets,
Yeah.
they're great together. It's also
Yeah.
probably because they were sleeping together, so that kind of helps there as well. It's never
Yeah.
a bad thing.
Fair,
Okay.
fair.
Uh-huh.
But the rest of the stuff is absolute gobbledygook. I mean, it is. I mean, the first one is fine enough, but it is pretty much, instead of Green Goblin, it's the Lizard. It's pretty much the bones of Raimi's first film.
And
It
his
really is.
parents. Don't forget his
His
parents.
parents and everything. Yes,
And
yes,
Uncle
yes.
Ben. Yep. And
How
all
could
that.
Or
we
is that the
forget-
second movie? I might be jumping ahead.
It does,
Honestly, I can't
you know
remember.
what? Sure. You know what I mean? that's how Sony was at the time. You know what?
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
But then I
yeah.
gotta tell you this: The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is by far one of the biggest abominations of the new millennium. It truly is a movie that I got so angry that I had to go see it to begin with. I was not interested in it at all, and I love my wife to death. She'll never watch this show, so I can say this. So my wife and our friends wanted to go see it for some god-awful reason. And at the time, my beloved San Antonio Spurs were in the playoffs. And it was the year they won the championship in 2013. I'll never forget it. It was Game 6 against the Mavericks in the first round. And I wanted to watch the game. And they were like, no, we're going to go see The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I said, I hate myself. And we watched the movie. And after we got out, I looked at the score and realized the Spurs lost. So I watched Game 7 a couple days later. We won. But we would have won in 6 if I had watched the game instead of this garbage movie that, I mean, is exactly why the MCU got this property in the first place.
Yeah, they
because
fumbled hard.
They took essentially, we all talk about Zack. I'm not trying to give him any credit here. We talk about
Zach
the
who?
Snyderverse and trying to cram too much in to catch up to Marvel. Holy hell. Have you not seen Spider-Man 2 try to be like 15 Marvel movies all at once?
Sinister
with
6 movie as well.
Sinister
Yeah.
6, a Green Goblin movie, a sequel to The Amazing Spider-Man, Electro movie, the movie about, Peter Parker and the Raiders of the Lost Parents. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much stuff crammed.
The will
into
they
that
won't
movie.
they of Gwen and Parker. So
The way that their like relationship comes together on top of a bridge in the middle of like New York, and
Hell
it's
yeah.
all green screen. So stupid. I mean, it is the reason why Marc Webb essentially has not had a good job in probably 10 years. Like, what has he done? Because
I think some people like that movie Gifted he directed, right? With Chris Evans, I guess.
I never did
My-
see that.
No, I thought we saw it together, JD. I think we may have reviewed it. I thought it was
I guess
okay.
that goes to
I guess
show
that kind of
how much
proves
I
it really
remember.
just
show
how
right there.
just how much of an impact that movie left. A
think
movie starring
Jay and
Chris
I did
Evans.
Jay and I did a trivia show one
That's so
time,
funny.
and I couldn't remember the title of that movie. So once again,
we
proving
reviewed that. What are you talking
Marc
about?
Webb and Gifted really
we
has
did.
just doesn't exist.
That's
But
so funny. I kind of want to
mean,
look this up now.
the one person I feel so bad for in these Amazing Spider-Man movies is Andrew Garfield. He is the one person I feel absolutely terrible for because he really wants
He
to be
loved
this.
this. He wanted this.
He wanted
loved
it to
it.
be, he wanted to take it seriously and be good at it. He really
I mean,
cared
this
about
this
trying.
would be like if they said, Ryan, you get to direct whatever movie you want, a movie that you've been dying to make your entire life, and then everybody behind the scenes absolutely sabotages your dream. Like that feels like that is the case because he
Mhm.
is giving it his all and trying to be different from Maguire and be something that is not what we've seen before. That's why he works so well also when he comes back in No Way Home. Spoilers. Because they actually had some writers there that knew how to write good material for him. And he's also a better actor than he was when he was playing those performances. He's evolved more
Sure.
since then. So
Sure.
but yeah, I don't know what you guys think. These suck.
Well, first of all, I have an answer to the Gifted
Okay.
dilemma.
Okay.
We did review this on Extra Film back in April of 2017. So you are right, Brendan.
Wasn't here.
However, I was not on that review. I'm not
Oh,
crazy.
okay.
It was
Thank
you
God.
and Vince. However, I was on for the second half of that episode.
That was back
So
when
you
we
and I
kind of
split.
mixed and matched on episodes. Yeah,
Yeah,
gosh.
so
Extra Film really was confusing back in the day.
It was. So we did do Gifted. If anyone wants to go check that out,
Oh my
I
God. He
have
did
not seen it.
He did that movie, The Only Living Boy in New York. Good God, this man. He went to jail. He's been doing TV for the last. Oh my God, he's doing that Snow White Disney live action remake with Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot. Oh God!
Oh,
All right.
boy.
Well, this man's ruined his
Well,
life.
I'm going to bounce off of you, Ryan, and inject a little bit of fun into this because, and I know that I'm going to assume that most people listening to this won't agree with me, and that's perfectly fine.
I think I know where you're going with this, JD, and I'll just say this. If it's what I think you're going to say, I agree with you.
Okay, we'll see.
Don't do it.
I think, and again, let me finish before we get all crazy here. I think The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is light years better than the first film.
I agree.
I think it is.
I agree.
Light years better.
Both
Now,
are not good. Both are not good.
Both are not good. let's put that out there.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
the hell is going on?
One of them at least has personality.
Yes,
It's not a
and-
good personality,
No.
but I would take at least something that's trying to be bonkers like Spider-Man 2 is here than the absolute nothingness that is the Amazing Spider-Man.
And that's it for me because outside of the chemistry of the two leads, that first Amazing Spider-Man is utterly forgettable. It is the definition of mundane. Nothing happens. It's very boring. Amazing Spider-Man 2 is, yes, very messy for all the reasons Ryan is talking about. But it at least has individual elements that I think are genuinely very good, including, again, the chemistry of Emma Stone and Andrew
Garfield.
Garfield.
I almost called him my son's name. So this is getting all confusing. And Andrew Garfield, because my son, my newborn son, his name is Andrew Parker Duran, and yes, and some of it has to do with this movie. Because my wife is in love with the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and again, going back to what I said
really?
earlier,
Really
I think,
loves this movie?
yeah, Brandy loves this film. She absolutely loves
Wow.
Amazing
Yeah.
Spider-Man 2. And again, it comes back to the rom-com of it all. And I think as a rom-com, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is electric. Maybe pun intended. It is very, very good. Very good. I absolutely
You're in jail
adore the
for that
film.
pun.
Fair. Look, I'll go
That's
willingly.
inappropriate.
I'm going
I-
willingly.
Inappropriate.
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He knew how bad that pun was. and
You
still
knew
went
it.
for
Like, I'll accept
You
it.
knew
Yes,
it, and
for
you
sure.
let it loose.
Yeah, but
Just like this movie, it knows how bad its personality is and chooses to embrace it.
100%. Yeah. And it is so good. It is really great. Jamie Foxx, I love that he's going for it, whether it works or not, maybe it doesn't, but I like that he's going for it. At least, again, to me, it's at least not forgettable like the first film was.
I like
think
Paul Giamatti in this one. He's
Yes,
in it for 5
exactly.
What are you doing?
I don't
think-
mind him in this. He's at least trying to do
Brendan.
something.
Yeah, look, it's not great,
God
but at
damn it,
least he's
guys.
trying. I think Hans Zimmer's score is genuinely great. I love that theme.
Hans
It's
Zimmer's on
classic.
vacation. Somebody else did it, and they slapped his name.
Well,
on it.
whoever
There's not
did it,
really
I do think it's Hans Zimmer because maybe not that initial theme that opens the film. There is something classic and Spider-Man-y about it that meshes together, which makes me think that maybe he was a part of it. But more than that, it's the Electro theme, which is like 10 minutes long, and it's very Hans Zimmer-y. Like there's no other way to describe it. That is 100% his thumbprint on that score, and I think it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and even a little bit different for Hans Zimmer at that time. So, like I and then there was another. I wanted to talk about the scene that Peter has with Aunt May. So, like again, looking at this in a microcosm, because earlier we talked about how they try to inject elements of Peter's backstory with his parents into these movies.
Oh my God.
Not successful, but at least they're trying something. However, I bring that up to say there's a moment in this film where Peter is trying to figure out more about his father and his mom and what happened. And Aunt May catches him in this process. And this has, been going on for a little bit because it's like halfway through the movie at this point.
Yeah.
And it has this cathartic moment where she's like, I raised you. I'm the one that, had to sacrifice and all of this sort of stuff. And this is why you hire someone like Andrew Garfield to be in this role, because the way he responds to that, like that is a genuinely heartwarming moment that is genuinely poignant. It's very effective in the context of that film. There are very few scenes where you can say that, but that is one that I think is great. So like in a microcosm, there are things about that film that I think are actually very good, that are actually memorable. I have not seen that film probably since 2014 or whenever it came out, but that's a scene that is potent, that still lingers in my memory. Same thing with the score, same thing with some of these other components that we're talking about. So yes, as a movie, it's very messy, very disjointed, overstuffed, not great. But there are parts of it that I think are actually very good. And when compared to that first film, which is so blah and just what's the worst thing you can say about a movie? Not even that it's bad. It's you don't remember anything about it.
It's personality.
Lifeless,
Well, and
soulless.
I think that's the worst thing for movies like this, like superhero movies that are meant to be kind of vibrant and colorful, at least within the realm of Spider-Man. So, yes, Amazing Spider-Man 2. It's like I don't want to sit here and defend this movie. This is like a 2 out of 5 star movie on Letterboxd for me at best.
It is worse than that.
Oh, it's not good. It's not good. But
It's bad.
I'll take a failed attempt at some personality over a movie that has none of it, which is why I do prefer. Now, most of it doesn't work. There are things about it that I think do work. Like, I actually think the opening chase through the streets with the Rhino, and just like the way that Andrew Garfield communicates with Emma Stone on the phone while he's kind of stuck to the front of the 18-wheeler there. I think it's kind of charming. I think it's funny.
I agree.
But again, most of the movie doesn't really. I actually think the ending and the whole Gwen Stacy thing, as devastating as it is on paper, I don't know if it quite earns what it's going for.
I would say that it does.
Okay.
Again, primarily because of the performances and their chemistry.
Well, the movie does none of the heavy lifting itself. Yeah,
I agree with that. It really comes down to those performances and their chemistry, and again, how electric they are together. It is effective. So by the time we get to that moment at the end, not because of the movie, but because of the performers, I do think that emotion is felt. And same thing with Gwen Stacy's speech at the end, which I think is is also very good. If I was going to give Webb any credit, it's maybe some of the editing there I think is very good. But yeah, it's not because of the movie. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I like that. When Gwen Stacy dies and her head hits the ground, I like that scene better in Parasite. To be fair,
Okay.
if you know what I mean. But I'm such a monster tonight.
Man,
But
I
but
still
honestly,
love you, Ryan,
like
don't worry.
all, but all the emotional sort of pathos and everything that like I would feel in that moment gets completely thrown away by this like disgusting ghoul looking Dane DeHaan as the hobgoblin Green Goblin thing.
I remember it.
And them doing all this. No,
Yeah,
just
whatever
because
that's
you
worth.
remember something doesn't mean it's better than what
I think
comes
in
before.
the case of this,
No.
I would defend it in that way. Like, here's another example. Let's look at like the DCEU, for instance. Okay, that first Suicide Squad that David Ayer directed, not a good movie. All right, I would technically say a movie like Black Adam is a better movie, but I like that Suicide Squad movie more than Black Adam because it at
I
least
agree.
tries to do things to stand
Totally
out.
agree with that, yeah.
That Suicide Squad movie is good for exactly what it was trying to be. Like it's so over stylized and so stupid and so dumb.
And
not
exactly
looking for
what
a
the Amazing
masterpiece.
Spider-Man 2 is.
No, because
Yep.
because the first movie, okay, you guys, I love you both, but you guys got to stop this nonsense. You got to take the blue pill and get out of this trance. All right.
Nah,
Because
I'm good.
No,
I'm
can't.
good.
because the
There's
first
fun to be had.
I like this drug.
builds-
I prefer
Yeah.
this drug.
the first movie builds all of this stuff up. Like I'm not, and you're making me defend the first Amazing Spider-Man, which really sucks. How dare you both? But like the fact of the matter is like the relationship, the establishment of those two characters of Gwen and Peter is really good in there. I do think that obviously we see a ton of the retreads from that first one, but I do think the Lizard character, Dr. Connors, is really good. I do think that the stuff that is with Gwen Stacy's father in the film, I do think that is good.
I like
too.
Dennis
It's good.
Leary in the first film.
He's
I will
good
give
in
the
the
film
in the
that.
film.
Yeah.
I do think that when Martin Sheen is in the film early on, he actually is a really good Uncle Ben, to be fair. And so is Sally Field as Aunt May. I think she's actually.
I like
Field is
her.
great in both.
Yeah, I like her.
Wish
I'm
there
not
was
sure.
more of her, like more stuff for her to do, because it's not like you grabbed, a random old lady. You grabbed Sally Field, 2-time Oscar winner.
That's
for
why she's
Christ's
great
sake.
in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
She's fine. But like it's like it's pretty, like it's fun. It's very youthful. It's not like the last movie that kind of came came to us. It's not like Spider-Man 3, so it's trying to be something new, and the potential for the sequel to build off of that is why I think that first film also is like, okay, that was fine for what it was for a setup film, but the sequel should like elevate it like the second one does, for most of these films in this franchise or any franchises or any property. And the second one just takes an absolute crap over everything because it's not
colorful
trying to
crap.
be a sequel. It's trying to be 9 to 20 other things. And the thing
It
that you
is.
guys
No, you're not wrong.
poo all over Spider-Man 3 about is exactly, but
the personality
magnified.
is the big part of it. Like there's
That
no
is true.
electricity to Spider-Man 3. That where I did find that in this film. That is
Just
the big
because
difference. for me.
Jamie Foxx has electricity come out of him does
I
not
have
mean
to
that this
keep going
frickin'
back
movie
to it. I've
has
committed.
any
It's not that he has
electricity in it.
I'm already
it's not
going
that he
to
has
jail.
electricity. It's also that he has a literal dubstep theme. And
Hell yeah. Hans Zimmer score slaps. I will die on that hill. It's
his
good.
death is so underwhelming. The character's so underwritten.
Yeah.
It's so bad. The Harry stuff, at least Harry was a character in the Raimi stuff. He's barely anything here. Like the Rhino stuff, he's mostly like your throwaway stuff kind of villain. So
actually,
I
he's
mean,
the best
whatever.
villain in the movie, if you ask me.
Probably so, and that's not saying much. But like, I mean, honestly, the movie, I forget a lot about the relationship stuff and care about the way it concludes because it's got 900 villains and subplots and like an espionage thriller with Peter's parents almost like wrapped around it. It's
It
so
literally
It's messy.
so
I don't
stupid.
disagree with that.
Bourne movie. I mean, this is a bad movie. We're spending way too much time.
It's
on
not
way
good.
too much time on this.
But I do remember certain things about it. I remember a lot of
No,
that
I mean,
relationship
it's
dynamic
hard
and
to
how fun
forget-
it is and how charming it
I
is.
forget bad movies sometimes. Like I remember, one of the first movies I ever saw for this podcast was Life Itself, and JD was like, "You're gonna review that?" And I'm like, "Sure." And then I went and saw it, and I'm like, "Give me a gun." You know what I mean? So like, I remember when Brendan and I saw Serenity. Serenity is not a good movie, but like, it's wild. And what it's trying to be.
That kind of falls into the same category for me with this movie is just
Okay.
the
That's
wild
fair.
elements.
Everybody's
And maybe maybe it's like a genre thing because there's some movies I'd be less forgiving of the wild and audacious moves that it makes, that it tries to do.
Using
and
the
fails
word
at.
audacious with this is giving it way too much.
Well, okay, like movies that try to do something and fail, okay, and fail miserably.
Like the
they're-
swings. The swings.
yeah,
the swings
yeah.
in Serenity.
Yeah, there are certain genres where I'd be less forgiving of those swings that it's trying to take. But I tend to
That's
be
fair.
more forgiving of those swings in the realm of superhero movies because we get so many of them. There's the risk of them being kind of blended together, right? And that's why I'm giving more. Not love's not the right word. That's why I'm giving more of a pass.
More
guess,
leniency.
yeah,
More
yeah,
leniency.
because like in the case of movies like this, in this genre, in this world, I want to see it do things and not just nothing. Yeah. So that's literally like that first film does no thing. It's nothing. That's
I
what
agree.
the movie
It's
is
one of the
not
most
there.
boring I've seen in this genre.
Yeah.
And to be clear, for me anyway, I can only speak for me, but it's not even just that some of this is memorable, and I agree with you, Ryan, that doesn't make it good. There's a lot of bad films that we see and you remember certain things about them for better or worse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And yes, there are things about this film that I do remember. However, I do think that there are singular aspects about it that in a vacuum, I think are actually good. Now, on the whole, yes, it is a bad movie. It's messy for all the reasons you talked about. But if we're going to talk about the score, if we're going to talk about the performances and the chemistry of the characters and the ending and the emotion and everything that I talked, the scene between Peter and Aunt May, like those are all aspects of this film that I think are genuinely good, not just memorable, good. And that's the difference for me. That is the difference between something and life itself, where you walk out maybe remembering it for all the wrong reasons. So just to be clear on that, but I agree with you too, Brendan. I agree with
let's
everything
at least round this out by saying, I mean, both these movies are not good. They're not good. I mean, if we're ranking all of these movies in this retrospective, I feel like will we all agree that they're the bottom two at the very least in some way?
I have Amazing Spider-Man 2 at number 7.
Oh, okay, that's even higher than I would have expected.
But yes, the first one I have last. I have that.
I have that one last as well.
Well, I have Amazing Spider-Man 2 last, where it belongs, and I have
number 7.
Spider-Man 3 second to last, and then Amazing Spider-Man. So
Okay,
but it's
we're not too far. I tend to go
It's not
back
that
and forth.
far.
I mean, I have Amazing Spider-Man at number 10, and then as far as my number 8 and number 9, it tends to go back and forth between the Amazing Spider-Man 2 and something else. But it really depends on my mood.
Yeah, I have Spider-Man 3 at 9, Far From Home at 8, and Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I have Spider-Man 3 at number 7, actually.
Yeah, so the way you feel about Spider-Man 3 is kind of how I feel about Amazing
There you
Spider-Man
go.
2 on the whole.
There you go.
I mean, kind of for the same reasons, just,
Anyway,
those
a movie
degrees there.
that these guys defended a lot, crapped the bed so much that the MCU decided to
is bored, and
get
thus,
it. You know what I mean?
Hey,
Thus
hey,
the
yeah.
Holland
So
era.
maybe we do have to give it more praise because it's the Batman and Robin thing, right?
No.
It's
No.
I don't
because
think we have to
Batman and Robin. That is a fun movie. It's so bad it's a good movie to watch. Like that is a.
I will
That
say
is-
this. I like that more than the Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I think that's
Yes.
maybe the 90s isms of it and
Well,
maybe
it's
just the
also
nostalgia
Arnold
blinders.
Schwarzenegger. Every line. Have you ever tried to play the drinking game with like every pun that he does?
Every
I
pun
would
that he
never
does,
do
that'll
that.
kill you.
I would never do
Kill
that.
you.
I
Take a
value
sip
my
every
life
time
too
you do
much.
that. Yeah.
Well,
I used
as
to
we,
see you. You know what I mean? Like, stuff like
as
that.
we
What
get
killed the
into
dinosaurs? The Ice Age.
Oh my god.
the
JD,
as
can we
get
just
in-
start live commentating that movie right now?
I
Anyway,
mean,
just,
if
I
we
mean,
want to. Look,
that's
I
another
think
day
we
for
can
another-
kind of start to wrap this up a little bit. We've talked about the MCU and these Spider-Man movies quite a bit. Obviously,
Yeah.
we reviewed them as they came out, unlike the last 5 movies that we've talked about. So I don't
Yeah.
know if we have to spend a ton of time here, but I guess we can kind
No.
of reiterate how we feel about the 3, and then we can kind of wrap this up talking the 2 animated films real fast.
Yeah. I like Spider-Man Homecoming quite a bit. I've always had trouble with the surprise twist at the end involving Adrian Toomes because I'm not sure if it's well handled. I get like the idea that he's still willing to villainously kill a child, despite him being a family man and
yeah.
the father of a daughter who also really likes this boy. I don't think it wrestles with that notion at all. But one thing I do love about Spider-Man Homecoming is the fact that it still exists in the MCU. It still feels like it has this friendly neighborhood feel, right? Which is what Spider-Man should have. And Tony Stark still being a character in it, it still finds a way to balance that smallness. I mean, most of the action sequences take place in like suburban backyards, which I love.
There's a whole sequence where he can't even web sling, like he has to drive a car.
But see, like that's why I do like Spider-Man Homecoming. Of these 10 films, I think I have it ranked around number 6. I mentioned when we were getting through the 2 amazing Spider-Man films and rounding out those conversations that I tend to have a film that straddles the number 8 or number 9 slot for me. That other film is Far From Home, the sequel, which I don't care for at all. And I think it's mostly because I think what Homecoming did so well in trying to balance its MCU bigness
Far
with its
From Home
smallness.
goes way outside
Far
of
From
that.
Home is just, that does not feel like a movie to me at all.
I mean, the title itself is very counterintuitive to what you're saying.
it really I don't think that film maintains any element of what I appreciate from a Spider-Man movie. And I also don't love the timing of having a victim of Tony Stark villain a movie after he had just died and we celebrated his legacy. I thought that was very ill-timed. It felt like a misguided placement. It's not I think I would have liked that movie more if it came out at a different point within phase 3. But to conclude phase 3 that way, I don't know. It felt very ill-timed for me, even though I do kind of like Jake Gyllenhaal as Quentin Beck. But yeah, that film I don't really care for, but at least No Way Home, I have to give a lot of credit for really maintaining the ethos of what Spider-Man is. Like there are some elements of the movie I don't love as a movie, but I think it's one that actually has a real sense of care for the ethos of Spider-Man, like I said. So I of the 3, it's my favorite of the MCU related Spider-Man movies for that reason. And I like that it commits to a tragic ending of sorts. And hopefully when they make a 4th movie, they don't undo it. I hope they maintain it as much as they can, because I think it ends in a really surprising and daring note.
I think to, I guess, be a little juxtaposing to what you're saying there, at least with Far From Home. And it's, one of the lesser films of the 10 that we're talking about here. Like I just noted, I think I have this at number 8. However, what I do appreciate about the film, and I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying there as far as the timing of it, but similarly with that timing, I think what's interesting here is that primarily, I do actually think the villain of it all gets somewhat lost. Like most of that film is about the hero's journey, which by that point in the MCU, that had become less of a concern because we had been building up to Infinity War and Endgame. So even though you kind of remove Peter from the small neighborhood aesthetic and you throw him overseas in Europe, tonally, emotionally, though, that film spends a lot of time on Peter and him just yearning for normalcy. That's what a lot of that movie is about, as well as him grieving. And there's something that, to me, for actually kind of the same, sort of the same reason that you were talking about with Homecoming, in terms of like that small scale thing. This is like Far From Home is doing that on a personal level with Peter, where we're coming off the heels of Infinity War and Endgame, where he is literally in space. He's literally out in the universe, fighting Thanos on another planet. And so now we've come back from all of that, and all he wants is to have a normal teenager life. And so there's something that I think taps into like a similar kind of vibe in terms of kind of toning things down from what had come before, that I do appreciate about that film, and where some of the dramatic nuances of it all, how that ties to Peter's arc. And so like that, I do think is what's refreshing to me about that film. But on the whole, the Mysterio stuff is uneven for me. That's
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, great character introduction in Civil War, a movie I don't like, but we're not going to get into that.
because it's
one of the best things about that movie, in a movie that's
Anyway,
Great.
go on.
then Homecoming comes out. I like Homecoming. I took my wife to Homecoming when
It's cute.
Sweetheart, and I'm talking about our actual Homecoming, but the movie
I
also
know.
took her to that too. But thought it was really good. I thought Holland is really great in this role.
Mhm.
I did like Keaton. I don't care what Braden says. Any decisions or whatnot, it's
like
Keats.
Keaton.
Keats
Yeah,
can never
Keaton.
do wrong. I don't
like
care what the
Keaton.
script does.
I just
Michael
hate
Keaton,
I just hate the twist.
I mean,
The scene
I
in the
think
car
twist-
before the dance, I think, is awesome.
yeah,
That scene so much. It's the worst scene in the whole movie for me.
I love it.
I like
love
it. I like
Give
it.
me
as
that.
That
well.
scene
That's
is like,
Keaton
oh,
Eaton.
you're a child? I'm going to kill you anyway because I'm a bad guy. I'm a bad guy. I don't care
Listen,
if you're a child. I'm
I'm
going to kill
not
you.
like
If I'm
Brendan.
bad, I'm going to kill you. That's how it feels for me. That's all. It's like if you're
See.
a dad and your daughter likes this boy, and you don't wrestle with the idea that you're going to threaten to kill a child, that does not ring true to me at all.
Yeah, and
I'm
look,
pro
I don't
killing children if
necessarily.
that's the case to get to this point.
I don't disagree with that. And to your point, Brendan, they probably should have done a little bit more up front, because what they established that character as saying like, hey, look, I'm a normal guy working.
Yeah,
then
and I
get
love that.
screwed by
I
the
love the
government.
blue collar element to him. I think that is great
Yeah.
and refreshing. But also as a family man, a family man is and someone that is dedicated to his family has a love and care for his family. So
for his family, and getting screwed the way he does. Like I understand the motivation factor. Like to me, I think that's why emotionally I'm not quite there as you are, because I understand that he's not going to let anything take this away from him.
and he
now.
doesn't realize that killing this boy would make his daughter devastated. So it's
mean,
Well,
like,
but he doesn't know that though.
but see, then the movie needs to address that.
And look, yeah, which is why. Look,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not saying that it's
Guys.
great. I'm just saying like
Guys.
it. Like they do spend a
Hello.
tinge on it, but could have done more. I do agree.
a
they could have
lot
done
more, I think. Yeah.
It's the MCU. You're asking for them to flesh things out? Okay.
Well, they've
anyway.
done that
Movies.
before, and
I
there's
think
potential.
guys.
Yeah.
Also, he's gonna kill a kid. Who cares? It's Spider-Man, for Christ's sakes. Like move on. Anyway.
That's
Thanos
child
killed
cruelty
him.
right there.
Listen, movies should kill more kids. All right, unless you're
no,
Gaspar
no.
Noé. All right. It's just mix up things. All right,
Such
maybe
a cheap
maybe a vulture
tactic.
should have won that every now and then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to be also, no, whatever happens in the film, I'm not going to be a purity police about it. It's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? It's like it's like the Evil
Look,
Dead
I think
movies,
Keaton's
like all
great.
this other
Whatever.
stuff. Just
Whatever
kill
that's
kids.
worth.
I
Okay,
like
fine,
Keaton in the
whatever.
role. Yeah, I
You know
think
what I
he's
mean?
good in the
All
role.
right. Far From Home, I do agree. It's a little bit lesser. I kind of give him the same grade as Homecoming. I think I do agree with you. It does feel like a weird movie to be right after
Mhm.
Endgame. I think see, I know that they say it's like at the end of Phase 3, right?
Yeah.
But really, it feels like the start of Phase 4. And so, because Endgame should have just been the end of Phase 3, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
No, yeah.
This says
No,
it.
for
So
sure.
in my mind, I see it as more of like a start of the next phase, right?
Yeah, or the very least,
And
Coda of sorts.
and it's where JD's. You've talked about it. They start dealing with the snap and all the ramifications of that, and after everything. So it kind of does feel like it truly actually is a start of Phase 4 for that. And I think that stuff but particularly also the stuff with Peter. I do find that to be really interesting. I think the Mysterio sort of stuff, I agree with you. It's a little bit uneven. I think Gyllenhaal, though, is doing his best and really giving it his all. And
Kind of reminds me of an angry movie director at times.
Yeah, it's sometimes he feels like he's giving a little bit of that Okja energy. You know what I mean to it. It's not like he went full that way, but like tapping into a little bit of that well, which I always love a little bit more of a unhinged Gyllenhaal than like like a straight laced Gyllenhaal.
Sure.
I think the twist kind of ending at the end really good, like really fun stuff. You know what I mean? Of like that kind of propels us into No Way Home, which is great. No Way Home is a good movie. I'm not going to say it's not. I do think that some of the editing of the movie is a little inconsistent because like it does that MCU thing where it leaves, especially for like its big, shocking stuff. Oh my God. Spoiler alert. If you haven't seen No Way Home, by the way, when all the Spider-Men show up and they have their scenes, like there's moments of like really long pauses because like it's anticipating that for an audience to see that rather than like when you rewatch it at home, it's like, these things get cut a little bit.
I think some of the stuff, I will admit, I think some of the stuff when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are reintroduced, I don't mind some of the timing there and just letting it relish in the quiet when you're watching it in the comfort of your own home. Where I will agree that some of the editing is a little bit wonky is when a lot of the villains are on screen and they're talking to each other, and you can kind of get a sense that they
might
probably
not
weren't
all
on
there.
set together.
I was gonna say they're not all there at the same
time. I did
time.
notice that quite a bit, at least in the first half of the film.
But I think the second half, I honestly do. Though I think that the first half of the film's pretty good. The Daredevil thing was a little like, okay, come on. But like,
I don't mind it.
It's a little bit of like the thing of like it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, right? It's trying to have all the stuff of the past and it's trying to have all this. And I think the ramifications of No Way Home is absolutely fascinating. And I hope they keep it that way, even though I know they won't. I think the Doctor Strange element of it, again, I keep saying this, Doctor Strange, one of my favorite characters in the MCU. Just absolutely love Benedict Cumberbatch in these roles. I love the tandem of Nate and MJ and Peter in this one especially. I think the villains are reintroduced are really great, as well as also the Holland kind of going angry Holland and about Aunt May. Thought that really worked. But then I just think that the stuff that really, really does work for the movie is having the nostalgia stuff, having all the three of the Peters talking in the film. It really, honestly, you could tell all three actors were there and you can tell that they all really liked each other and it worked.
And they committed. They were wholly committed.
It's kind of a lightning in a bottle thing. I hope they don't try to tap into it too much again, because it's a lot to kind of keep doing that. But like, I think it gives a great continuation of Spider-Man 2's elements. I think also like a really great job of giving Andrew Garfield sort of actual, like I said, things to do, emotional conclusion. Like when he saves MJ, I think that moment is perfect. It's a perfect moment for that Spider-Man. His reaction.
God, he's
good. Like,
I
don't think it's that he's emotional about saving Zendaya in that moment. It's, oh my God, somebody wrote me good dialogue. You know what I mean? So I think that's
well, he doesn't even say anything though. That's the thing. Like,
it's the beauty of, I guess, having, not having those screenwriters around anymore. But I do think where it leaves off, I'm so fascinated to see where they're going to go when they, obviously when the writer's strike is over and they are able to get back, to the drawing board for the fourth one. But if I can only say one thing, and then we can move on to the animated, is for the love of God, please stop trying to put home in all your damn titles. It's annoying. Just call it whatever you want. It was a trilogy.
I think we can move on from that.
I mean, like, if you do it for the fourth one, I'm going to get pissed.
Yeah,
all right, so
that's fair.
What's the opposite of the term home?
Away.
Which we've already done. We're far from home.
Yeah. Just away from home, much better title. Just
Spider-Man Away Coming.
Yeah. Awakening.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say about No Way Home, and obviously if you want to hear my full thoughts, you can just go hear our review of it that we did when it came out. I love the film, but I do want to emphasize this because we brought this up when Doctor Strange and the Multiverse came out, but it ties to this film. I think what's so fascinating about Doctor Strange in this movie is the almost underrated complexity of him here, because he's almost like a child, right? Where where Wong's like, I don't want you to do this thing, and he's like, we're gonna do this thing. Like he's like very like anarchy, and then he does the spell, which he messes up, and his reaction to that is, it's your fault, Peter. You go fix this, even though he's the one controlling the magic. And he opens up the multiverse. His reaction is, you go clean it up. Yeah, like he takes no responsibility for it whatsoever. And I do not say that as a bad thing. Like, I kind of love that about the character, that even though he's an Avenger and he once held this high status, which he no longer has, but I love the playfulness of the performance and of the character. And I kind of love, and that even at the end, right? Like, even at the end when the sky is breaking open, what he tells Peter is, they're here for you. Like he had nothing to do with this at all. Yeah. Hey, and I love that, which is why I was so frustrated with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse, or whatever it's called, when they do not wrestle with that at all. Like, they just completely pass over that he was one of the major causes of something horrible to happen.
He doesn't remember. He doesn't remember that.
But he does, right? Because
nobody remembers any of that stuff.
Which is fair. But in that movie, and maybe this is a flub on Marvel's part, but they do have a reference to the film. Like in that conversation with American Chavez in the cafe, he says something about, there was a Spider-Man problem. Or whatever he says there, but he does reference it.
Well, they know of Spider-Man, but they don't know of Peter Parker. That's
and maybe that's what it is.
That's the spell. Yeah, it's because even at the end of No Way Home, when Peter Parker visits May's grave, he runs into Happy, and Happy even says, like, not knowing who this young boy is, how did you know her? And he says, through Spider-Man. So there is a knowledge of Spider-Man, but not the connectivity of Peter Parker.
Which is weird because that's his aunt. Anyway, sorry.
It's weird. Yeah.
Anyway, like, in the grand scheme of things, that's a whatever thing. Yeah. But I do, for No Way Home purposes, I love that about Strange. I kind of love that he's a hero, a pseudo hero. He's an Avenger.
He's also just like, dude, I want to just lay back low and
he just chill. Like, I just kind of love that he royally messes up and is like, someone else can clean this up.
I mean, he is the guy that's like, I know there's only one way that we're gonna fix all this, and it's essentially 5 years of absolute torture. So I mean, to be fair, he did kind of save the world. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways. So he's just taking a little bit of like, can you be Spider-Man for 5 seconds and let me just take a break? You know?
I do love that about it. Anyway, that's just a little tidbit about it.
Little thing.
All right, and then we get to the 2 animated films, Into the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse.
They're not very good, are they?
No, they're not Best Picture quality or anything.
Yeah, I know. I'm a real.
I mean, they're both only carrying a freaking low 87 on Metacritic right now. Like, they both have the same score. They're both just such disappointing movies.
Bush League.
Yeah.
Wow. They're great. They're a lot of fun. I think what I love about them is just I know you guys talked about it. Really, probably a lot.
Yeah, so I guess this will be more for you, Ryan, than it will be for us.
Cool. Everyone, shut up. No, I'm just kidding. I think that they really know how to push kind of what essentially, like, when Del Toro last year talked about the medium of animation, and he was talking a lot about it with Pinocchio. When I think of the forwarding motion of what you could do with animation, I think of the creative style in which these movies are made. They're made with such bombastic elegance that I find them to be a fresh, like, breath of air in the comic book world that we sort of live in. And they are operating from, I think, true masters of producers, but as well as also writers in Lord and Miller. I think Lord and Miller are truly some of the best we have in Hollywood. I think it really still looks continuously stupid every single day that Lord and Miller were taken off of Solo, because I think that if we would have finally got that full product the way that they saw it, that movie would have been a masterpiece. Because they continuously make 2 really great R-rated comedies, a really great movie in the Lego Movie that we all love, and when and their Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball stuff is actually like low key really funny stuff for kids.
Sure. Yeah.
Like they are consistent at creating underrated properties or properties that people are like, you mean to tell me they're going to make a 21 Jump Street movie? Ugh. They're going to make a movie about Legos? Ugh. Oh my God. How many more Spider-Man movie are they really going to make out there? And every time we do this, they come and deliver the goods. And they have delivered, I think, the goods here. Like Into the Spider-Verse, I have conceded this. We're going to have to go back in the channels and whatnot and change the 2018 InSession Film Awards. Because I just recently rewatched both of them. And I got to say, as much as I loved Isle of the Dogs, I would give Into the Spider-Verse that Best Animated Feature prize that year. And I do think that the new one is just as good. And they really blend well together. I'm so excited for Beyond because I do finally think that we could have potentially the greatest comic book trilogy of all time if this movie sticks, or I'm sorry, not if, when this movie sticks to the landing.
Yeah.
Because I believe that it will.
I mean, at this rate, they're all going to have the same score, right? It's going to get another 87 on Metacritic. And then another 95 on Rotten Tomatoes and all that fun stuff.
But no, I just think that it's great to see, even if it's an animated form. I know they're already talking about trying to do a live action form of it, and I'm like, whatever, but also like cool.
Yeah.
Just of Miles as a character, but in I guess the Holland universe or whatnot. But it's just great to see. I banged this drum for years of seeing Latino representation up on the screen and seeing it within, whether it's Spider-Man or the Avengers or whatever, just seeing something where I'm not looking at it and watching a stereotype, because I know a lot of people laugh at the Michael Pena stuff, and it's in a good bit, but it is still built on a sort of stereotypical Latino male voice and over explaining. And it's a trope that, while it works best for those movies, it's still a trope that is a problem, I think. And it's
to be fair to him, he has stated publicly that he has a friend or like a cousin that speaks like that, and that's where he pulls that from. So.
But still, like, you can say that, but you could still feel that.
You're right. You're right, though. I'm not. Yeah, you're right.
No, I know you're not, JD. I know, but it's the delicate balance of, like, I understand, like, Michael Pena is not the problem. It's the problem of, like, just allowing that to continue to happen. But anyway, because, like, Supergirl's going to is a Colombian actress, and we got Blue Beetle coming out, and so I like this. I like to see this a little bit of a turn happening here, hopefully,
for sure.
But Miles is definitely in that, and I do think that his culture influences a lot of his decision making. It's very much imminent of his environment that he is in. We see that a lot in Into the Spider-Verse. We see that, I think, even more in Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, we you'll be proud, Ryan. We actually talk about that. We talk about how, like, there is that feeling of, like, the ethnicity of it all is
it's a big part of it, for sure.
It really,
I mean, it is about making those. It's about making those characters, each of individual world, feel personalized to those Spider-Men. And what I do like about Across the Spider-Verse, and I don't know if you guys talked about this, but I like the fact that Lord and Miller lean on the history that we've kind of talked about here tonight and use that to sort of talk about superhero films at large. The idea of that these comic books and these movies create the same cycle over and over again. And yet what I would argue is that Into the Spider-Verse, these 3 films are trying to create something different and new that upsets that wheel. And that's what makes Miles' story so personal to so many people. And I like that that is the conflict in the film and what we will
Mhm.
see forward and beyond. And I like that. I thought that was like,
Yeah.
it's an interesting twist rather than like, we've talked about 3 different eras of Spider-Man, and they all have a setup film, and they all have, 2 of them show the death of the same characters, and da 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 da. Like, it's
Yeah.
all in a same circular motion when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse is trying to do something different across the Spider-Verse films are trying to do something different.
No,
They're
you're right.
trying to put them in all in like an encapsulation. But the
Yeah.
Spider-Verse movies, they want to do something bold and different with the characters. And I think that bodes well for finally Sony realizing we can do that if we hand the keys over to some really talented filmmakers and writers here. And the voice casts are phenomenal.
They're
We don't,
great. Yeah.
and I
Mhm.
know we talked, Daniel Pemberton's score is incredible for Across
So
the
good.
Spider-Verse, but
So
really
good.
it's that voice cast in Across the Spider-Verse is one of the best ones we've had in a long, long time.
It's great.
Agreed.
And I mean, it reminded me a little bit, and I don't know if you guys are a big fan of it or not. It reminded me a little bit of like Back to the Future Part 1 or Part 2, a little bit, the kind of the way it ended, but a much better like resolution to the ending of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot
That was
of
a
setup.
sillier movie. So
Yeah,
it's
that's a
different tone.
sillier movie, and it's a little bit more convoluted. This one's a lot more, I think, straightforward, but it had that vibes of like, we are going to make a trilogy, and we are going to do it with this story, and we're going to do it with these characters that we have infused with personality and a lot of gumption. And so I think that these, when it's all said and done, it could have the potential of even being better than the first 2 Raimi films. Like, it has that potential.
Mm.
So
It's
Yeah.
certainly possible, like when we see Beyond the Spider-Verse come out and how well that ends up doing. Because I'm with you, Ryan. I have a hunch that it's going to be a great movie. I don't see it going in a downward direction. And depending on how good it is and what it chooses to showcase to us, it could even further recontextualize what makes Across the Spider-Verse and Into the Spider-Verse so good already, that maybe retroactively we'll think this might be the best Spider-Man movie. I don't know if I'll get there, because Spider-Man 2 is admittedly one of my, like, if I were to do my top 50 favorite movies of all time, I might make room for Spider-Man 2. So, and it's one I've loved for so long. I don't know if I'll be able to get to that point, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people do.
Yeah.
You're right. Like when we did review the movie, which is available now, as JD mentioned in the beginning of this episode, we did talk a lot about how Across the Spider-Verse specifically is kind of a deconstruction of the ethos of Spider-Man. We focus a lot more on the idea of responsibility, the thematic idea and how it is there. But you're not wrong from a superhero film standpoint in a meta way. The fact that it very literally talks about canon events in Across the Spider-Verse, a bit direct, but I mean, it certainly talks about that. There is an element to that there. For
sure.
it's essentially taking the multiverse. Like, honestly, I think it's such a refreshing look at the multiverse, and of the fact that like it I mean, the comparisons, yes, I've heard some people do Everything Everywhere All at Once, but
I think it's a fair comparison though. Like, because
it's a fair comparison, but this stuff started before that, and so like this, I'm not saying this came here first, but like, but it's like, but these ideas were sort of built, and this expansion is made it much so that, like, when Miguel is explaining it to Miles, how devastating it is to realize that they've all
You
gone
understand
through
his
pain.
perspective. You really do.
And it's not. I mean, when we saw Into the Spider-Verse, we all thought, okay, that's our next bad guy. He's not a bad guy. He's very empathetic, and you understand why he's doing these things. He's not just trying to protect himself. He's trying to protect every single person. I like that. Really, honestly, the movie doesn't have pretty much an antagonist outside of the Spot, which the Spot would be like the Rhino, right? Where it's like
Very
the throwaway
fun. We talked about
character.
that a
Love
lot,
the
too.
Spot.
in the first like
so much
5 minutes, and then you be done, right? You know what I mean? And
villain of the
exactly,
week.
it's like, it's the villain of the week, and then
I still think the best origin story of any supervillain I think we've ever seen.
I mean, the fact that he's the bagel, the bagel guy.
Guess we'll reveal it now. We'll
Back
say,
around.
yeah, he got hit by a bagel and into the Spider-Verse and decided to become a villain.
I'm just like, I mean, holy shit, the
That's
level
amazing.
of detail for there
That's
it's incredible. And I think why I have so much trust that the Beyond will stick the landing and everything, because they're not changing directors, they're not changing writers. It's everyone that's worked on this film is working on the next one as well.
They just did them back to back, right?
Yeah, they did them
I
back to back.
believe
So
yeah.
that'll be totally fine. I'm it's all just about like, when's the movie coming out and when can I see it, so then I know how great it is, and but then also too, I love all of Gwen's stuff in the film. I don't think, I know a lot of people have been talking about that. The only criticism you can make about Across the Spider-Verse is, I think, a little bit of the sound mix at the beginning of the movie is
The
hard
sound.
to hear.
We didn't really talk about that.
We didn't talk about that, but
do
you're
kind of
right.
agree
Yeah,
with that.
It's a
and
little like drums
format?
overlay the.
Yeah, maybe it depends on the format you see it in. I'm not sure, because seeing it in
I saw it in a regular theater, so
did I, but I saw it in standard as opposed to like 3D or IMAX or something.
Yeah, maybe
and
so.
Yeah, because sometimes the 3D experience is just designed for a different sonic palette, right? But seeing it in standard, in my experience, the at times the dialogue was a little difficult to decipher.
But it doesn't detract from the overall film.
And I think it
itself.
gets
Like,
better as the film goes.
Yeah, and I
I think I just got used to it.
I
or
got
maybe-
used to it,
yeah.
and also, Into the Spider-Verse, it took me a while to get into the visual aesthetics. This time it took me to get into the audio aesthetics. So maybe when Beyond comes, like
It'll be hard to get
Figure
into
it all
the
out.
Yeah, it'll just be the best movie I've ever seen.
It'll be a 4D movie where we have a hard time getting into the smell aesthetics of
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
They'll give us one of those smelling cards, and we have to like.
I do want
Forgot a
to.
coin. I got to scratch off stuff.
Yeah.
I do want to wind this down for time. So as we conclude this retrospective, do you guys want to offer up your ranking of these 10 movies?
Yeah.
That's great question.
I can pull it up here.
Yeah,
This is
I
wonderful
already
visual.
I have mine pulled up, so I'll just
Okay.
go first while you guys pull up your
Yeah, you
list.
go ahead,
so
man.
at number 1 for me, as I mentioned, I have Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi Spider-Man 2. At number 2, I have Across the Spider-Verse. At number 3, I have No Way Home. At number 4, I have Into the Spider-Verse. At number 5 is Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man. And then at 6, I have Homecoming. And then at 7, everyone's favorite, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And then at 8, I have Far From Home. 9, Spider-Man 3. And 10, The Amazing Spider-Man.
I love how you gave dreaded Roger Ebert thumbs down.
2 thumbs down for Amazing Spider-Man.
That's just mean.
It's interesting, let's bring that up. The classic Siskel and Ebert thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm looking at these 10 films, and if I'm going to be honest, only 3 of them, actually, 3 of them I would definitely give a thumbs down to. Spider-Man 3, like I said, I like it a little bit more than you guys do, but I'm kind of like here with it, if I'm being honest.
I'm like, why didn't they ever do this on the show?
Yeah, like it,
you know what I
it,
mean?
it creates
Like, right,
this idea
for our
that
audio listeners,
yeah.
like right in the middle. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, what was that? The Joaquin Phoenix Gladiator thing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of like the
Well,
the
even
gladiator.
Roger Ebert has addressed that many times. He's never really cared for the whole like black and white thumbs up, thumbs down mentality, because there are gray areas when it comes to movies, and they're never absolute. So at least I give them credit for acknowledging that the rating system is kind of bullcrap at times.
That's
Victim
why
of
we
their
stopped
own
giving out
design.
grades.
I'm glad we did, because
Yeah.
I'd rather us talk about the film and what we feel about it in the
Exactly.
moment, and recognize that sometimes those feelings could change and alter with time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I with my ranking, I also have Spider-Man 2 at number 1. Before this episode, actually before we did our review of Across the Spider-Verse, JD, with Christian Eulenberg, I mentioned that I wasn't ready to say that I like Across the Spider-Verse more than Into the Spider-Verse. And that was because it was so overwhelming that there are so many things I know I missed that I need to rewatch. But the conversation we had on it, even just the amount of time I've had to sit on the film, I'll go ahead and put it at number 2, Across the Spider-Verse specifically. And it's mostly it's mostly because I just have such a respect for the film for being as bold and audacious as it was for a form of pop entertainment like that, which I just feel like is so rare. A film that is meant to be a box office hit is trying to challenge the audience and ask for multiple viewings to catch everything.
Astounding
so
craftsmanship.
yeah, so I'll give it the edge because of that sense of respect. So now at this point, I'll put it at my number
Okay.
2, with Into the Spider-Verse at number 3, Raimi's first film at number 4, No Way Home at number 5, Homecoming at number 6, Spider-Man 3 at number 7, Amazing Spider-Man 2 at number 8, Far From Home at 9, and then dead last like you, the first Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
My
Good
ranking, which is the definitive.
It's a web of lies, is what his
Web
ranking
of
is.
lies. How the
throne of lies.
turntables.
Shun the 8-legged freak.
Number 1, Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi. Number 2 is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Okay.
Number 3 is Across the Spider-Verse.
Okay.
Number 4 is Into the Spider-Verse. Are you guys ready? You're going to love this. Number 5 is No Way Home. Number 6 is Homecoming. And number 7 is Far From Home. All right? Isn't that it?
Show me the way to go home. I'm
The Amazing
tired and I wanna
Spider-Man
go
is
to bed.
8. Spider-Man 3 is at 9 from Sam Raimi. And number 10, with a bullet, shoot it in the head.
I'll
is The
take
Amazing
it.
Spider-Man 2.
Give it to me. Electric.
Electric.
I love the electric.
I will say Jamie Foxx much better in No Way Home. And hopefully.
Well, he's basically playing a different character, even if he's
Yeah,
not.
exactly.
He is playing a different
Character
character.
with good dialogue.
His performance is a course correction. Let's just be clear there.
Yeah.
To be fair, most of that film is a course correction of everything in the Andrew Garfield cinematic universe.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah, that's fair. At any rate, let us know if you agree or disagree with anything we had to say here, and especially with Ryan's rankings. You can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can leave a comment right below. We would love to hear that. And with that, I guess we'll transition to the end of the show. Next week is going to be a fun episode. It is going to be one of the quintessential InSession Film Podcast episodes where, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Jay and Ryan and Brendan cannot be here due to scheduling. And it'll be a JD solo episode where I will go on for 2 hours. I will give an essay on Steve Jablonsky's scores for Transformers and how transcendent, underrated they are, how masterful they are.
You joke about this, JD, but given the opportunity to do a solo episode, you could easily do that for an hour.
I could. I could. Yeah.
To be fair, yeah, if that's the topic next week, you better believe you're doing it by yourself.
I will.
The scores are good in those movies. I
will
his
I'm
music.
not
die
listening
on the
to
hill.
any of that. I've got,
Like,
I got
say-
some audiobooks I'm listening to. I can't get into that.
Say what you will about Bayformers, and I mean this from the deepest parts of my soul. The scores for those films are incredibly underrated. They are genuinely fantastic. Very, very good. It's certainly not talked about enough, but that it is in the echelon of, the Dark Knight films, Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't care what kind of blockbuster we're talking about from the last 20 to 30 years. Those scores belong in that conversation. They are phenomenal pieces of work.
I guess the reason why that people don't think about them is because they're in some pretty dookie
They're in
movies.
Bayformer movies. Yeah, that's
which is a real shame.
100% what it is. You're not wrong on that, but
I know.
yeah, you listen to those films on their, or not the films, the scores on their own. So good. Absolutely ravishing pieces of
Go on
work from
Spotify
Steve
right
Jablonsky. At any rate, stay tuned next week for our Transformers retrospective.
No, that
Not what
that
we're doing.
ain't happening. I'm gonna veto that one.
I can tell you this: if that's happening, you can get guests. Seriously.
Well, it's funny you guys say that. I haven't really had the opportunity yet to bring it up. I might as well now since we're programming live here on the podcast. But
Great.
I might get a guest and do some sort of Patreon bonus content. Talking about
Honestly,
Transformers.
we all want a week off. JD, if you want to get a guest and do a Bay retrospective, it's actually not a bad idea.
I mean, I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed.
Well, next week on the show, you'll hear JD and a guest talk about Transformers while me and Brendan are sipping pina coladas. All right.
There you go. But I want to
Maybe
get
God
someone.
in the
Pina
rain.
coladas.
I want to
Yeah.
get someone though that isn't who you would expect to be on a show like that, like Adam
Sure.
Kempenaar from Film Spotting. You think he's available? You think he'd want to
think
talk
he'd want to?
Transformers
Yeah.
with me?
Yeah, you
Like,
know,
that's-
I was you should invite like, I don't know, David Ehrlich. You know what I mean?
David Ehrlich.
Oh,
If
gosh,
David Ehrlich
that's
is
deadly.
listening, you're invited. Please join
Yeah.
me. We'll talk about Transformers.
Ann
next
Thompson.
Gosh, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
just trying to
I-
think of all these
Yeah.
people.
That's who
Yeah.
I'd really want to have that conversation with.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
At any rate, we'll work out those details. We'll figure out something for next week. Maybe it'll be a solo episode. Who
Well,
knows?
I thought that was when we might do the score bracket episode that we were talking so much about, because you often cite Steve Jablonsky's music for Transformers, and with a new Transformers movie coming out, maybe this is the time to do that. I don't know. So
Yeah.
we
Brendan,
talked
I was
possible.
just packing my bags for my vacation.
Brian
just when he
That's
thought
when
he
we go
was
on
out,
vacation.
we pulled him back in.
Just when they thought they pulled me back in.
Yeah,
Hoo-ah!
What do we got to like? Either, next week we're talking about Tarantino. Ryan, you going on vacation?
Hell no.
Hell no. Yeah, that's what we'll have
Even
to
though
do.
I come on, every time you guys do this to me, like it's like Tarantino. I'm like, well, shit, I'll be there.
Yeah, yep. You're
Kind of hard not to be, you know.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I also want to plug a few reviews. So it hadn't come out. Well, maybe it had come out. I'll plug it in again because I thought it was a great conversation. But Jay and I's conversation on Master Gardener, I thought was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You can go and check that out. It's also very counterintuitive to a lot of reviews, including the written review for that on our website by our own Dave Giannini,
Frickin'
who
Dave.
did not like the movie at all.
That is the epitome of a Paul Schrader movie if I've ever seen it. Of
Exactly.
3 guys
100%.
reviewing it and
Some
3
of
guys
it's
being
amazing.
completely different.
Yeah,
But you could all write about it in your journals later.
exactly. So go and check that out. I was joined by Amy Thomason of Women in Session to talk The Little Mermaid. That was a lot of fun. And then, as we noted, we have a review out right now for Across the Spider-Verse, so you can go and listen to that. And then, speaking of Women in Session, their latest episode, they talked about their favorite movie decades. And my God, there was a lot of debate,
conversation.
a lot of strong opinions.
Yeah.
Was there any strong opinions about hating the 1970s? Because if they were, I'm pissed.
Yes, there was.
Yep. Okay. I would encourage everyone not to listen to that then.
Nah,
No, it was good. It was good.
Uh,
I did not agree with some of the stuff said, but it was very
No
entertaining. There were strong, bold opinions.
Go listen to it. You know, you really need, like, if you're on a jog and you need something to like get you angry to
Something to
finish
run
that
from.
mile,
Something to run
that'll get it done for you.
No, it was good. It was very entertaining. I encourage you to go and check it out. I thought they did a great job. It was a lot of fun. So I also want to say thank you to all of our patrons. If you support us on Patreon, it really means the world to us. We cannot do this without you. If you want to support us, that's patreon.com/InSession Film. If we end up doing some sort of score thing next weekend, or Tarantino, who knows? Maybe we'll go outside the box.
Yeah, for no reason
I-
whatsoever.
It's very possible I'll do a Transformers thing on Patreon if that's the case.
Sure.
I think that'll
Won't be
the plan.
surprised.
Again, follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, hit that like button, leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the like. With that said, thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for listening to us talk a little fun with Spider-Man. We will see you all next time on the InSession Film Podcast. I'm gonna get you, Spider-Man.
Rock on. That's what this is. Rock on.